I know people shit on the Minecraft for having a durability system that literally doesn't contribute to the game feeling all that great. Oops. Oculus only supports Embedium. Well, damn, I need to update Embedium. I personally am fine with durability systems. Durability systems are inherently, uh, I'm gonna say it again, good game design sometimes entails having to make systems and mechanics that are inherently uncomfortable and something, a mechanic, a necessary evil that players are gonna be forced, are going to have to hate but will have no choice but to deal with. An extreme example would be for gacha games having being basically gambling because it's a free to play game. This is the only way. That's the only way they can make profit. Oh, and also it makes it harder to pirate games that use that method. So that's a nice plus for them, I suppose. Anyway, the fact that the guns don't have durability while everything else I have so far still does. I mean, there is still ammo, but bows also use ammo and they still have durability, making the guns kind of objectively the best projectiles you could ever be using. It is meta, which is perfectly understandable for you to want to encourage your players to use the mechanics you implemented into your mod, but I should have opened the mod before closing the. I don't want to go through the error mod loading error thing bullshit. There, I found it. Game mods copy paste. There you go. Latest version of Embedium is now being used.
Focus on the actually good points. Fight in general. He reins himself in, understanding his anger towards all for once misplaced, when the circumstances that led him here were all his own fault. I brought all of this upon myself. This fight has moved everything, he thinks. Weakness that once drove Edge into doing normal acts he had committed gets recontextualized, as he tells himself to not focus on a grand but to keep cursing the weakness that led him down the path of lockdown, full of regret, death, mistakes. Dragging all for one through the fucking mud as he accepts that he has to pay his penance and lay a path in the future, something he egotistically did in the past, now doing it as a way to clear the baggage from the path shoulder will be walking. This is some of the best content in this arc.
Alright, you know what? I don't think I need
I really
Oculus.
enjoy a lot of the stuff Horikoshi does with Endeavor, even though I find the reaction
I don't wanna
and he very easily maintains a top spot.
bug fix my mods all over
This fight
again.
itself almost feels like a direct sequel to the high-end fight, where Endeavor once again rushes into battle against someone he understands all too well. Another person who can destroy people's futures with their hands, and the fight even ends with the same move, though of course it doesn't work as well. This fight was super cool for Endeavor and is one of the few standouts of this extremely lackluster and terrible arc. Cutting away from good content. Jiro lost an ear, so perhaps the stakes of the series are saved, except unfortunately, we just introduced the concept of prosthetics that can do anything. So just slap a prosthetic ear on there, then she'll be good. Speaking of things we introduced in this arc, Horde Rebellions. I can't lie, this is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever seen. Back in the Star Trek section, I used a term called Horde magic. And believe me when I say it goes absolutely off of the rails here in this arc. We're supposed to believe a couple of things here. One, that Quarks, if they feel inspired with things happening around them, they can act out. Second, they can act out. If we are to believe that they can just do this and refuse being used to take down the AFO message from inside, then that means that at any point before, this was possible. That means that in the fight against the symbol of peace, the guy who previously split his head like a watermelon, they didn't feel inspired to act out. Or any time before that. We're made to believe that the payback for being a little bastard is that AFO will open his comically large mouth and bite you like a cartoon character, but isn't that only a good thing? If your message goes away, you lose the court, which means you weaken him. It seems like a good deal to me. Of course, we find out in the SNS arc that AFO can't actually get rid of Quarks, so what does the Big Mouth do? Like, does it do anything? I guess at no other point in human history are we to believe that a court decided, man, fuck this, and, get a little silly. Not over the hundreds of years that AFO existed because while Horikoshi tried to ban it, explained why this could happen through people standing up to AFO. It's very clearly an asshole to make him job in this fight. In fairness, there is a little bit of precedent when it comes to court messages interfering, and if only we knew how bad things would get. While this scene does exist, they barely manipulate stinkers, rather than actively cause a revolt inside of a spiritual realm. It's all about suspension of disbelief, and this one goes way too far. Speaking of suspension of disbelief, oh, yippee, All for One's rewinding, and Endeavor backs him into a corner, beating the absolute shit out of him, and essentially puts him on death's door, because this is the weakest version of All for One's mom ever, and as he himself puts it, this body is just a scrap heap. Villains did indeed have access to the core-destroying bullets, and Dr. Garaki had reworked them entirely, and instead of doing what Overhaul's bullets would do, which was specifically target the core factor and rewind that to nothingness, it targets the entire body to rewind it into nothingness, specifically avoiding the core factor somehow. The question comes in, however, that if Dr. Garaki, the guy who is capable of reviving dead people and turning them into biologically mutated super people all miners struggle with, why can he not alter the destroying bullets to just not kill someone? The bullets are pretty vague, but if we assume that the amount of the contents inside of the round equals how much it rewinds, could the internals simply not be drained so that we get Prime All for One instead of him killing himself? Did the guy capable of necromancy just not think of that? Is he stupid? I also can't help but feel that there were several better times to pop this little potion. Of course, it's a backup measure that All for One doesn't want to use, so he's not just going to insta-pop it. Perhaps, however, when you've clearly been led into a trap, it might be time to activate your Super Saiyan round and kill every single person around you because this bullet turns you into the strongest person in existence, as well as rewinding any damage you take. Wait, what's that? Oh. For some reason, when All for One takes damage, he rewinds faster. Why the fuck does it do that? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, whatever, it's fine. It feels extremely illogical for the guy whose entire character at this point is, I'm the smartest guy in human history, to wait until he's literally one D6 server packet away from actually, for real, dying. Alternatively, if he didn't want to risk it on himself because this bullet is pretty high risk, could you also just grab it while you're being bear hugged by the only man capable of killing you and just stab it into him or something, causing him to rewind to death? Especially because it would be so much faster because he's not as old as All for One. The rewind bullet just has a numerous amount of issues, and I really, really hate this scene, especially with what it leads to. Immediately after this, something silly happens to Kurikiri, which we'll get to later, and portals start spawning, bringing in tons of Twice clones as an offshoot from the Ochaco and Toga fight. Dabi is also here. Hello, Dabi. As the battle descends into chaos, All for One's new goal is to get to Shigaraki before he rewinds into nothing so he can successfully complete the journey and take over his body. So, what can we draw from this? Well, All for One is on a clock, because every passing second is dropping him down in age. Surely, he would do everything he can to get to Shigaraki. Just kidding. Fuck you. He's gonna stop and talk to these self-described extras every 0.1 seconds because Hawks wants to chat with him, and he falls for it every time. We get regularly beat over the head with, it's really important to get to Shigaraki, while also being slapped in the face with, hey, All for One, how was your day? And then, he just indulges for some reason. Now, I want to make something because I don't want you guys to think that this is going to be some cinema syntax critique. I think it's fine and even good when characters make bad decisions. Characters are human beings, and humans are not notable for making the best decisions they can make. The reason why I apply a different standard to All for One is because he is the mastermind character trope, and also his lack of mental stability has yet to come. So this is supposed to be him at his most composed when it comes to his decision making. Hundreds and hundreds of years of perfect decision making has led him to this point, so when he makes these mistakes or decisions, rather than feeling like organic human fuck-ups, it just feels like plot contrivances. Despite being in the most powerful state he has been in on
I want the
screen,
sniper.
he also exemplifies his newfound Act 3 incompetence by literally never landing a real blow on anybody, especially Hawks, who, as mentioned before, keeps cutting him off in pursuit of Shigaraki to talk to him. And All for One just stops the chat, never wanted to land a killing blow on him, until he finally does.
Holy shit.
Oh my god, this arc is just so ass.
That is expensive. Alright, well, I mean, I guess I wouldn't want to rebuild something that has a recipe like this.
Hawks, a twink. A lot of people focus on this cringe dialogue. I personally don't think it's super egregious.
Right, these are all objective upgrades to my previous shotgun. I could do with getting a direct upgrade like this. Or my lapis. They're supposed to be used for magic, but apparently they can be used for guns too. Anyway, this one's the most appealing to me since it has the most base ammo count. .308. Winchester. Damn. People really shortened the Desert Eagle as Eagle? Snake Eye? Nah! Oh yo, a Glock. Can't get any more classic than that. $17 and $6. No armor piercing. I really quite like this handgun. It fires really fast. I don't see a need to switch out of that. Okay, so some of them use different ones. I'm pretty sure I should be able to attach, but like snipers should just deal more damage overall. Yeah. Their ammo is expensive. Holy Jesus. Apparently I need a little bit more iron. Suppose it's about time I tried seeing if I can get fortune on at least my pickaxe specifically. Wait, maybe I have a book. Unfortunately, I do not.
Considering this is how King is, unfortunately, what is substantially worse is actually Inasa. Let's get one thing out of the way here. Without Alpha One's interference, Inasa was single-handedly capable of putting a stop to an entire Sadman's parade. This feat cannot be understated, as this was stopping hundreds, if not thousands, of clones twice. It leaves us with one question. What the fuck was this guy doing during the Paranormal Liberation War arc? Was he on vacation? Why was he not put on the Hawks team so that maybe Hawks didn't have to kill a man, but instead the entirety of Sadman's parade could be subdued? This on top of Hawks' initial reaction to seeing twice again after
I'm just gonna give up
right now is bewildering. It's even more funny when paired with his comment from chapter 299. Quote, when they're back in the corner and truly free, that's when they show their true colors, end quote. After almost zero introspection on Hawks' part on the death of Twice, and just tons on the surface level, he was a really good guy. The first thing he thinks upon seeing him is to just immediately kill him again, though he also exists, and is actually here this time and is completely capable of stopping him, though of course this was hindered by Alpha One's presence. Speaking of Anasa, the guy who hated Endeavor's guts because he was weak once, he now knows that Endeavor indeed was not a very good dude. What is his reaction? That's okay, he's trying really hard. The character that basically existed to hate Endeavor's guts before anyone else did has now completely 180'd in an extremely obvious showing that is representative of MHA's cast at large. Nobody gives a shit, and that's just super disappointing. I already know people will say in response to this because I've already talked about this before, but no. I don't think Inasa should refuse to save the world because he hates Endeavor. I think we should be like, man, Endeavor is kind of a dick, but we gotta do what we gotta do. It's just a complete fumble of post-Dobby stance consequences, which is a shame because that chapter is incredible. This isn't really the end of the
Could have sworn I saw some iron.
I'll talk about one last thing, and that is
leftovers around here.
Tokoyami and crew are doing their best against Alpha One, and when you immediately think of that, that's not
there
a
it
good
is.
idea. Why would you damage the guy who was rewinding something the series has explicitly shown us before is the opposite of what you want to do, because that gives them more time. Because for some reason in this arc, damaging Alpha One speeds up rewind despite an entire fight in the manga being based on it working in a completely antithetical way, the foundation of this fight. Interesting. This fight had its moments, but overall, it's alright. And let's go ahead and move on to that. Shoto vs. Dobby is actually good. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, among maybe just a couple of stinkers. Dobby is just an absolute standout in this final arc, starting his first major fight, announcing his identity by burning so hot, he burns the All Might statue directly to Kamina. The boy born to chase after the back of the man Endeavor couldn't catch, now burns the recreation of his legacy. Let's also talk about his drip for a second. The all-white kimono-type clothing he wears is symbolic of purity. In Shinto, it's a color reserved for priests and the deceased. Dobby's get-up change is him arriving here ready for his own funeral. Shows that he came here to die. Let's examine the backstory of the Dabi in this fight. Burns himself and is saved by All For One. Now, this was initially terrifying, the idea of All For One being even more intertwined in the story, but it actually worked out in the end, in my opinion. AFO patches him up, and little Toya finds out that his actions have led to his permanent wounding and extreme damage, making him incredibly frail. Despite all, he just wants to go back and show his dad what he can do, because all he does is keep failing. This drive that Toya felt could not be contained by All For One. He was the one piece of AFO's puzzle that got away, and he arrives at the Todoroki's household to see that nothing has changed. Endeavor just kept it going to his next key, and this marked the death of Toya and the birth of Dabi. Japan is a massively Buddhist nation, and in Buddhism, death is a cycle. Toya is reborn as Dabi, as he prays at his altar, and now in this fight against Shoto years later, dawns white. Many Japanese Buddhist corpses were dressed in largely white attire as pilgrims undergoing their final journey. This white robe signifies Dabi's last journey, a pilgrim to death. It makes it all the more poignant when we find out that Dabi shouldn't be alive. Something has kept him going. He somehow survived the initial Ika cyclone of week. Dr. Rocky said that without AFO's help, he would be dead in a short period of time, but just kept chugging, being kept alive allegedly by pure spite. And this is what leads us to this final conflict here. Now, there are a few issues with this fight. Like, first of all, who in their right fucking mindset Ida to a fight where he's useless? All Might, you dumb bastard. Obviously, he will come into play at some point, but I'm definitely not in hindsight to say that. But it's just a very silly idea to send the guy who has overeating issues to a fight that takes place literally in hell. We also just get more unfortunate scenes of people in Endeavor's life not really caring about what he did and making like-hearted remarks about them, still supporting him. Look, I get it. This is the end, and Horikoshi wants the heroes to be one cohesive unit. It's too bad we just rushed right to the final war and had no time to extrapolate on these interesting plot points. There's even room for interesting dynamic here, with all these rich and powerful people sticking together as a form of class solidarity, only really caring about propping up the symbol of money-making. But instead, what we get is just nothing. Look, I've scribbled across like one for my life, so I imagine I've covered this enough, so let's just move on. Overall, was certainly an orphan. Such an orphan, in fact, that it seems he might have been in the exact same place as Toya. This is currently not gone anywhere yet, so I'm not going to speak about it as it's final. But the implication that All For One also bet on the cheese off his life is extremely dumb. It's exactly what I'm referring to. When I talk about AFO being involved in every part of the story, how all that makes the world feel so small and far too connected. Things that don't help with MJ's world is everything having to be shoved into volume extras, like the entire event that let Dabi float the orphanage, or the aforementioned volume extra that gives SNS a purpose only to rip it away. This is when you could really tell the pressure was on Horikoshi. Story details being flubbed to be put in paragraphs and volume extras, noticeable degradation of art quality at times, chapters that kept getting shorter and shorter, and at some point taking a break week every other week, sometimes sun break weeks. My Hero Academia has inadvertently become the poster boy of Weekly Shonen Jump overwork. Let's face it, producing 14 to 18 pages of content every single week is an impossible task apparently kept together by people passionate about what they are doing and being exploited every step of the way. You see it with Oda, you see it with Kubo, you see it with Togashi. All of these people are being harmed to produce content for shareholders, but because this is what they have always dreamed of, they're just allowed to happen, especially when coupled with Japan's culture of accepting their circumstances and shutting up. Is it possible that some of these, in my opinion, awful writing decisions are a result of being put through a weekly beat grinder? Absolutely. This release cycle runs completely opposite to creativity and art, and unfortunately, during this final stretch, Horikoshi never lets up. No big break, just pain. As even other artists tweet out wishing for his health, he continued forward. The same guy who wrote the arc about working so hard that it hurts you never gives himself time to rest, feeling beholden to shareholders and having nightmares of My Hero Academia getting axed even though it's in the final arc and 400 chapters deep. Unfortunately, at the very end, the exploitative practices of Weekly Shonen Jump dragged My Hero Academia down further, and it's apparent. Maybe not primarily in this fight, but a lot of chapters start feeling put out for the sake of getting a chapter out. If Kaisen was on break, MHA had to be coming out. It was clear that Weekly Shonen Jump didn't want both of them out of the magazine at the same time, and they often took turns taking breaks every other week. And a lot of these chapters are definitely a result of that requirement, but, let's actually talk about the good parts of this fight real quick. The tail end of this fight has a lot of projection coming from Toya and onto Shoto, as he refers to him as a half-baked puppet that will never amount to anything. I mean, the writing is on the wall for that one. It leads to a really good character moment for Shoto, as he hears this beratement from Toya, he's able to do something that has been a long time coming. He flows both fire and ice on both sides, in a sense, by creating cold fire that flows through his veins. Comments and a mentality like that are not things that will get to Shoto. Stealing his resolve and combining the two sides of himself he struggled with for so long to stay on his own. This is his power. He finally puts a stop to Toya's rampage as the visual imagery of a child Toya reaching out in tears tries to claim Shoto, and he unleashes a massive great glacial aegir. Aegir refers to the sea and also is referencing a really old Icelandic poem from the 10th century in which the poet talks about the death of the sun who had died during a storm in the sea. Another talks about losing his son by slaying the sea. It's also in reference to Ayashamar, a symbol of both power and protection. Power is Shoto's whole thing. Glacier is in reference to preserving sling and ice, and protection is in reference to saving himself. And just like that, Toya Todoroki was defeated. Uh-oh.
Let's go cave exploring now. I feel like that's the logical
For the sake of
next
transparency, this
best
fight actually takes place
step
for like 25 chapters.
in my progression right now.
We're doing this now for the sake of flow. I'll be honest, I'm not the
An upgrade
biggest fan
too,
of this
but
fight, but I
what
hate it. Dobby and Endeavor finally come face to face, and Endeavor has to deal with the fact that his son has become a
is
weapon of
that?
mass destruction, threatening to blow up the entire surrounding area, including the evacuation.
Alright, I need to see that.
That we just so happen to move directly on the battlefield. Perhaps not the best call. One of many strange calls made in this war, in fact. So let's just get this part out of the way now. Getten is indeed related to Rei. I have said multiple times over the past few that this would stink, and yeah, here it is. My Hero Academia actually makes its world smaller by connecting all of its random cast members to each other instead of being this massive, diverse world full of superpowers. Yeah, I really don't like this reveal, especially considering this is probably the last thing Getten will ever do, and also Mr. Compress, who had this massive reveal chapter and has been in prison for the past 100 chapters, counting. Dobby was able to recreate Shoto's special new move for some reason. Oh, has ice. That's interesting. Even a lot of people who enjoy My Hero Academia still are a bit weirded out by this development. He looks that Toya has been surviving things he should reasonably survive, and it's not like he's making giant Shoto ice ramps, it's just enough ice to protect his internal organs from bursting. If the criticism is that it just sort of happens and that's it, yeah, I can agree with that. Endeavor's own reckless abandonment of his child never let him experience this moment until Toya was on the verge of death. Toya copies Shoto's ability just after the latter proves he is still a person, and it's an interesting way to show Toya's lack of identity and purpose. Throughout My Hero Academia, he's just been kind of a copycat poser, but taking everything from people and twisting it in to fit his own mentality. Dobby, for example, got his own start with Stain, someone who wanted to massively disincentivize the selfish theatrics of heroism, yet Dobby's entire thing is about selfish theatrics, so him co-opting Shoto's move does fit in line with these ideas. I don't hate it, I don't love it, but the scene afterward of Endeavor and Dobby having a tangle of flames is so incredibly cool. As Endeavor takes full responsibility and decides to sacrifice himself to save everyone else. This is an interesting choice for two reasons. One, I think Endeavor dying as the conclusion of his arc kinda fucking sucks. For similar reasons to why I don't like All Might dying, I think death as a conclusion of this arc just doesn't work. In a story about self-discovery and atonement for your wrongdoings, the answer to it at the end of the day being that you can only find that atonement through demise is both really boring and also a massive cop-out. What matters more in this type of arc is living to see the harm you caused, and able to make changes to better yourself and the situations you have caused. Death is a way to avoid the hard work that comes with atonement. Not only that, but My Hero Academia was pretty adamant about, hey, don't fucking kill yourself, dumbass. Midoriya pushing on despite his horrible circumstances was bad. All Might wanted to keep fighting despite his massive wound was portrayed as a pretty bad decision, even though of course it had good outcomes. And thankfully, My Hero Academia stays consistent here, and Endeavor trying to kill himself isn't positive. As a response to Endeavor's goal of blowing himself up in the sky, the entire Totoro family shows up to stop him and cool Toya down. Now, I gotta say, them all showing up here is pretty contrived. It's contingent on the planning for this war being so bad that the evacuation path is under an act or so. There is a level, though, way in a contrivance is worth the result. It's similar to how the series started because of a contrived encounter with Midoriya and always be. Obviously, all
Where
accept
did
this
my horse go?
to some really good shit, and also led to,
There you
entire
are.
series. In this
I should
case,
give her a
I'll
name.
say it's kind of worth it because this is a decent fight. I think it's also nice as another parallel to the high-end fight, where Endeavor took over the sky to burn away a symbol of his past with a totem.
I shall name her after the engine that makes my favorite monster work.
He has already done enough hijacking plotline, so to have the entire family show up to put it.
I shall name her Full.
It's a nice parallel to Sakoto Peak, showing what would have happened if the family wasn't fractured and broken by Endeavor. They all deserve to be. Of course, one person is missing. Shoto and Ida recover from their fight, and we finally find out why Ida was sent here. It's another contrivance, purely to get Shoto to his fight location, but it's a nice moment. It furthers MHA's thematic relevance of Nomad Island, that you should rely on those who want to help you, especially as All Might comes into the radio to cheer them on, and we're reminded that Ida's legs are meant to guide children. Shoto arrived on scene and Toya Todoroki was frozen, containing the devastating explosion. This leads to a very touching and simultaneously depressing scene of Toya thinking to himself, everyone is finally watching me. If it was this simple, then why was it so hard? Ultimately, Toya was an unfair child, and while some disagree, we'll touch on that more during the Ochako vs. Tokyo section, so hold on for that discourse. The fight concludes with Endeavor apologizing not just to Toya, but to Fuyuki, Natsuko, Shoto, and Rei. All he has done wrong, and how his failures have led to this moment. Chapter 345, we get a beautiful shot of Toya as he looks at Shoto from the shadow. The same visual motif used a bunch of the story, and one we'll be discussing shortly. And in these final chapters, we get a similar shot, but Toya sees Shoto as a crying child, signifying that he has had his views on things changed in his arc. Overall, the Todoroki Violence final fight was fine. It felt like, however, that it should have been exceptional. Almost conclusion of one of My Hero Academia's best plotlines, and it left me feeling a little disappointed. I still enjoyed myself, but it definitely felt like something that was speaking out to you going, just you wait till the end one for the actual plotline, rather than delivering a solid ending. Or maybe it was also just a mix of my love for anime out over these 3 terrible chapters. That's what's kind of concerning about part 3 of this video series. As I go over all these notes and all these experiences, you can basically see the passion fade from me. Fun fact about this plotline, in chapter 190, Dabi was beating Endeavor, chapter 290 was Dabi, chapter 390 is the I believe. But that's at the end of one of my best plotlines, sort of, kinda. And now, let's get to the absolute first one.
Fucking hell.
It's unfortunate that we couldn't save the worst for last, because this is My Hero Academia to see. Genuinely, nothing ever good at the time reaches this level of awful. It's likely nothing ever will. That may set the stage for Future Home. For seemingly no particular reason, All Might decided to send almost every minority in MHA to go fight the other minorities, despite having absolutely zero character relations. Spinner and Shoji? Nothing. Spinner and Koda? Nothing. Shoji and Koda? Nothing. Rock? Why is he here? All Horikoshi seemingly wanted was slam his heteromorphic action figures together, but halfway through realized that he was not built for this, and hastily gave Shoji a backstory to half-assedly connect Shoji and Spinner at the 11th hour. And in a worrying trend, to simplify the conclusion, our antagonist has been turned into a blubbering monster, as it becomes increasingly clear throughout the fights that Horikoshi doesn't really want monster actions. We could make exceptions for Dabi because he was returning to Ash, but he too was reverted to childlike cries of die and calling for his dad. Basically, there is a massive riot of mutants that are tired of being treated the way they are. We touched back in the first retrospective how even non-heteromorphic quirks like Shinso's brainwashing will create a slant towards people's treatment, and it was stated multiple times that people like Shoji have it particularly bad, like how that furry girl in the Villain Network was called a monster. It's very, very clear the allegory that is being drawn here. Heteromorphic discrimination is Horikoshi's stand-in for racism. It's a layer of separation to make it a little less on the nose. So, if heteromorphs are very clearly a stand-in for real-world racism, and they are, on the surface, rising up against multiple perceived slights on behalf of the state apparatus, but also as a result of racial tensions boiling over for decades, and they are portrayed as turning into a violent mob attacking buildings that they really shouldn't be, I wonder what Horikoshi might be referencing here. Oh, those are real-life protests that took place in the United States. Nice. Now, look, a lot of people are in severe denial about this because he's Japanese, so surely he would never reference American political events, despite the fact that Horikoshi is clearly very invested in American media and American aesthetics, and understands pretty well how we move at times before, and made an entire manga that is clearly heavily inspired by American comics. Yeah, absolutely not. Look, let's set aside the fact that authors take inspiration from other nations' history and events.
I guess Lapis was good, but...
And it's only Japanese authors that are infantilized in this regard. And let's accept it on its face that Horikoshi would surely never reference America. Some people use this as a further shield to say that we are really just being specifically America-centric about this plotline, and Japan just doesn't have the historical baggage of racism like the US does, which it's not one-to-one, but Japan definitely has racism. Ask Koreans in Japan how things are going. Here's the thing. Even if Horikoshi didn't intentionally draw a parallel here between the heteromorph riots and the US riots, it doesn't really matter. One, people have all sorts of unconscious feelings when creating art, hence these statements about all art being political. No matter what, if you dive into the social or historical or cultural or political context surrounding art, you can understand quite a bit more about its creation. Picasso has a super famous piece called Eureka. Someone could for real look you dead in the eyes and tell you that this piece isn't political, and for someone without any art knowledge, you can see how someone comes to that conclusion. However, Picasso painted this in direct response to the bombing of Guernica, becoming a worldwide nerd piece that helped bring attention to the Spanish Civil War. So, while you could easily look at this and take away nothing, if you look beyond the surface for more than 15 seconds, you can see that this piece was influenced by historical context. My Hero Academia takes this analogy between the US riots and this series event even further by dismissing the validity of their outrage and instead focusing it solely on the fact that they are attacking, with that big quotes, a hospital. I put it in quotes because they don't really damage the hospital itself and don't attack any of the staff. In fact, there's a scene where the doctors stand up to the rioters and they just go in a different direction because they had no intention of killing these people. Just like real life, the discourse surrounding the event was hijacked to shine light on the potential property damage of the riots rather than the loss of life that these mutants experienced. That Horikoshi highlights in the same set of events by creating a list of genocides that didn't exist until 5 seconds prior and are all Star Wars references. Durkheim was a French sociologist active in the late 1890s and early 1900s, and he was especially known for acting those that was particular to his time. That crime is a lot more nuanced than bad things. What crime does is show the roots of humanity that were not being met by the status quo. Instead of writing off criminals for their wrongdoing, write work instructive to look at the crime, to find out what conditions of social life were not met, to use crime as a prelude to reform. Riots, both in real life and in My Hero Academia, are the results of decades of racial frustration, and when your entire life is essentially defined by this oppression, the optics of your retaliation, relevance, and after systemic disempowerment. We can examine the use of visuals in this plotline as well, because obviously manga is a visual medium. The way the writers are drawn is very consistent with how the series portrays people.
Time and leaves.
Like we touched on earlier in the villain hunt arc. Obviously, we can draw the same conclusion here. The rioters are doing a bad thing, and of course, rioting is bad. Violence is not an ideal thing to engage in, but as I touched on earlier, there is a reason for it. People don't tend to turn to mass social retaliation like this unprompted. This plotline also shows a hilarious lack of nuance by having multiple characters say that by living in the city, other heteromorph characters wouldn't have experienced discrimination. While it's true that cities are diverse melting pots, that diversity also includes bigoted opinions and statements. And obviously, if you spend more than 3 seconds thinking about this, yes, there is racism in cities. Horikoshi's mouthpiece, Shoji, would criticize the rioters for having no plan, just attacking the hospital to free Kurogiri. As student viewers will notice, the heroes did not fucking do anything either. They knew about the attack ahead of time, enough to put them here, but did not evacuate any of the patients, the doctors, and never moved Kurogiri. It's not like mass evacuation would have been an issue for them, as the entire premise of this arc was founded on them utilizing the War Court to mobilize the hero army in an instant. So this plotline has multiple fundamental failings. Its premise is shit, its real-life politics are shit, and its character writing is shit. Of course, just like everything else, some people will go out of their way to defend this plotline. A common argument being that people are just trying too hard to equate it to real-life issues in race dynamics, and surely Horikoshi never had that working on this. As I've discussed at length in my Curtains Are Blue video, all art will be influenced by artists' life experiences, and so too will the viewer's perception of that art. Even if Horikoshi never intended for this plotline to be read through the lens of someone likening it to the US riots, the fact that it can be done so accurately and easily is proof enough that there is something fundamentally wrong with Horikoshi's analogy. The second defense is that this wasn't a direct response to US race riots, but just the fact that they were conned by All for One in doing this. To me personally, this is largely irrelevant, and honestly came way too close to anti-Semitic depictions of them controlling narratives or other narratives about minorities not knowing what is in best interest. While criticizing the mutants for having no plan, Shoji tells Spinner that he too was persecuted, and though their actions were not justified, there has to be a better way. The new antagonist Horikoshi pulled out of his ass for this plotline disagrees with Shoji, saying that he offers no other solution, and that this is a pathetic cry of his own ego and referring to his idea as childish naivety. And for some reason, Horikoshi decided to portray this guy as if he's a fucking lunatic, with action lines and his eyes bulging out of his skull as if he's wrong. Also, Horikoshi named him Disgustus. Yeah. Shoji's lackluster response is that because of the actions here at the hospital today, their children might be the next targets of discrimination, and all I can think is they already are. Shoji himself, in his own backstory, was the target of a hate crime. It's possible any of these hate crimes that Horikoshi pulled out of his ass and named after Star Wars references also could have been children. Children, teenagers, young adults, middle-aged people, and elderly people are all likely targets of discrimination. And seeing as how nothing about the current status quo of the story was showing any indication of that changing, it's equally as likely that this generation's children would also be victims. Another funny scene is when Shoji is telling the class his backstory in a flashback because fuck ever including this chronologically in modern-day My Hero Academia. He tells Koda and Tokoyami to understand racism because they live in the city, and leaves out Mina and Suyu, Mina, the girl who gets called Raccoon Eyes, and Mineta apologizes for calling Shoji an octopus, but not for being a sexual predator. Just a funny little thing. Anyway, this plotline more or less wraps up with Shoji telling the miners that instead of standing up for themselves, they should simply expose racists until racism stops. Surely that will work. This is actually a piece of real-life rhetoric known as, quote, sunlight is the best disinfectant, end quote. It refers to the concept of simply putting a spotlight on problematic elements so that they go away. This is a solid line of argument if you are a 14 or a 37-year-old Japanese man. Allowing people to be openly and violently racist and hoping exposure brings them down has literally never worked. The US being a nation very familiar with extreme atrocities, nothing intolerant, yet even in modern day, they only continue to seize power and add some people with tolerance.
Oh hey, Amethyst.
When your only solution is to shine a light on them, they are not disinfected. You only use the sunlight to grow stronger. In a study by Richard Rogers called Deplatforming Following Extreme Internet Celebrities and Alternate Social Media, he follows highly popular cases like Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos, who have been swiftly and effectively removed from the public sphere. And with that,
I'm not
their
gonna
audience
remove that.
has been reduced as well as their potential reach. It also comes to demonstrate a shift in what is considered acceptable on social media, as unacceptable content and individuals are removed. Of course, My Hero Academia is a shoujo manga, and children read it, so he isn't obligated to go into real-life race dynamics for children, even though Weekly Shonen Jump is only trending older as time goes on. However, I would also argue that having children read your works gives the author even more responsibility when it comes to portraying these topics well, especially when nobody forced Horikoshi to make a racist plotline, he did it himself. If you're going to write something like this at all, you should look into it beyond watching Fox News, and that goes doubly if you're writing for an audience of primarily children. Also, My Hero Academia literally has the KKK. Come on now. To wrap up this shitty, terrible plotline, if we are criticizing the mutants for acting out against oppression and how they should have found another way, isn't it really funny and ironic that this riot is what thrust mutant discrimination into the limelight of the story, effectively making it matter to the reader and our characters? Beforehand, this was nothing more than a couple of offhanded references, and now it's a primary plotline that Mori felt the need to wrap up and properly address in the final arc. So, even though we soapbox about how rioting is bad, the riots worked? Just like real-world riots? Writing L. Anyway, they push in, and we get some okay spinner characterization, and then Kurogiri wakes up. Yeah, whatever, I don't... Shit, man, let's just go. Let's just move on. Across the battlefield, while Shoji fumbles the bag, Gantamachia arrives on scene to all for one versus everyone in fucking Japan fight. At this point, I realized, oh, this is just a poorly matched version of the W. Right when you think the plot is going to progress, we do the My Hero Academia standard flashback to explain why things are happening. When we left off with the Gantamachia plotline with Mina and Kirishima, Mina saved some kids from Gantamachia when Kirishima froze. A year later, Mina froze, so Kirishima saved her. Or kind of upset because Jay getting shafted for the sake of a male character. I personally didn't see it that way. I saw this scene as more of the planting of a seed character arc. Yeah, fuck you, buddy. It's the final act, and also we are at the final arc, and she hasn't done a single thing. Mina gets to use her super strong acid that turns her white against Gantamachia, and that lasts about 2 pages as she laments being weak. Absolutely nothing before or after, as Hori desperately tries to make us think this conflict and Midnight's killer actually means something. As Gantamachia is desperate to get back to All for One, he gets brainwashed by Shinso. This is his real big moment in the arc, and he's never seen again. The Gantamachia gets brainwashed into arriving at the battlefield and attacking All for One. However, Shinso's power did not get an off-screen upgrade. ability, so when AFO shoots one major attack on Gigantomachia, they stop. Plot twist, Gigantomachia really is mad at All for One, even though he wasn't mad about it 3 page turns ago. He decides that now is the time to beef with All for One behind him, and not in the past few months or the multiple years it's spent alone. It's the scientific definition of an asshole. No build-up, completely unsatisfying, and a massive contrivance that isn't worth the content to get, especially considering that a few page turns later, Gigantomachia gets one shot by All for One. We do, however, get some new information that I am bringing up from the internet. The reason All for One is able to attack so hard to the point that he is blowing himself to pieces is a twofold issue of mind and Shigaraki. As his age decreases, his unconscious mental Shigaraki intensifies, meaning that Shigaraki's hatred has more of an effect on him, allowing him to break past his limit and attack harder than ever. As he rewinds, he lands on the ground in front of Hawks and takes his quirk. This is really fucking lame, and the concept of Hawks using his quirk and twice Tadami, of all people, held way more thematic emphasis than AFO being responsible for it. The metaphors of flying too close to the sun, a bird losing his wings after making a questionable decision, and a character that shares many similarities with Hawks' backstory do it all came in a nice of Hawks' character going forward. And too bad though, his deal he got and then lost his quirk. I did all this for nothing. That about picks up the lightning rod for the section. It sucked. Let's move on to something that can actually be pretty good. For this fight, let's turn back the clock a bit, and by a bit, I mean a lot. Deku was arbitrarily pulled into the portal and arrives on the scene of Ochako vs. Toga. Toga begs Deku not to leave, and this is where we learn that danger sense is 50% less broken. Because Toga loves Deku, and this is her way of showing affection, there is no danger sense because she has no hostile intent. This is when we get the line that basically immediately sent this plotline to fail in the eyes of many people. I want you to be my boyfriend. A woman has a crush on a man, therefore the West has fallen. Of course, I'm not going to deny that this is a really corny way to deliver this. MHA is pretty known for its corny delivery, especially in this Ochako and Toga plotline, but it's also really not the end of the world. This serves a greater purpose than just being weird or corny, though. It's used as a way to dive deeper into Toga's idea of love, as she says that turning into someone else is all about love. Midoriya outright rejects her, telling her that he always wanted to be strong like All Might, but couldn't imagine wanting to share the same heart mindset. Just like back in PLW, Toga faces rejection again, so she comes to the conclusion that this is her last stand, and as usual, Deku wants to solve the situation right here, right now. Deku could hit her with one punch and charge smash and be done with it, but that doesn't make a very compelling story and would just kind of suck. Also, this is Ochako's plotline, so she just asks Deku to her, and despite some consideration, he accepts and leaves the battlefield, which is actually a continuation of the theme of not shouldering everything on his own. We get some more corny lines, but as usual, there is more than meets the eye. As Ochako declares to Toga that she lives how she wants, but still hasn't come to terms with how she feels about Midoriya. Now, I know some of you are going to stop me here because, oh goodness, Ochako has been entirely rude. There is a lot to be said about the common sentiment about Ochako's character, and a lot of it can be summed up by, you just didn't really deep it. Not to imply that Ochako is the apogee of creativity or the gold standard of storytelling, because she is severely lacking in most screen time and writing. But a lot of the reception to her plotline reads like a pretty double standard. Get you to Akatsu from JJK, who is all about love, and he's called Raw, Go, Swag. I mean, there he used to be a lot more swag. That same consideration isn't given to Ochako at all, who is also about love. Not necessarily the same aspects, but the common criticism is that because she has a crush on Deku, that she's a standard female shonen character and is dookie ass because of it. I think drawing the line with female characters arbitrarily at you cannot be interested in the protagonist isn't really doing the epic activist people think it is. It's just punishing female characters for being. In an effort to prop up female characters in a genre where they generally get the short end of the stick, we have circled back to also punishing what we consider traditional femininity, and praising characters like Nobara Kumisaki because they exhibit literally physically strong traits. A lot of people unironically think Mirko is a better character than Ochako, and, like, huh? The character with absolutely nothing but nonsense plating for fun is better than a character with an actual plotline? I'm teach their own, I guess. For those that were not paying attention, apparently very many of you, trigger warning, Ochako has a crush on Midoriya, and also she has 4 points. That's all, okay. But seriously, her motivation to help her peers comes from a similar place to Midoriya's, living on behalf of other people, specifically not yourself. Of course, selflessness to some degree is a good thing. Hey, matter too. and Ochako becoming a hero to see her parents' happiness come to fruition, and putting aside her own personal life to focus on that, go together to form a core for Ochako, suppression. Iniko Toga, her direct foil, is someone who lives entirely for herself, having a childhood being suppressed by her parents, not meaning any harm but having a taboo quirk, and being forced to suppress her urges and her sense of love, or being placed in work counseling that quite literally said that they were just trying to make her normal. Of course, normal is a subjective state of being that often exists to crush things that society doesn't like. So one day, Toga finally snapped, and the only place that would accept her as she is the League of Villains, a found family of people felt by society, allegedly. As mentioned back in POW, their fight over the doll wasn't them fangirling over Deku or whatever, it was a discussion about Ochako suppressing herself using the All Might doll as a catalyst. Of course, we could still think this plotline was lame or not interesting, or needed way more time to cook, and that's completely fair, but because there are no big flashy battles, or because they aren't men, these two characters don't seem to get the same level of analytical charitability that some other people do. I mean, Jesus Christ, Hiroshima keeps cracking top 10 in popularity polls, how the fuck does it even happen? Okay, now that we understand this climax is going to be about Oshako's suppression of self, and Toga's lack of acceptance, or desire to be considered under the umbrella of normalcy, let's get back into the actual story, and most of it was off screen. Oh, okay. Well, we're finally here now, and Toga bets on Spinner and consumes twice his blood to let loose Sandman's parade. At the same time, Kurogiri activates his portals for the resolution of the plot that shall not be named, allowing the devastation to spread. For some reason, however, Toga's clones can't use the quirks. How convenient. This is a trend that is continued throughout the final arc. It's as if Horikoshi reread his entire story and went, holy fuck, what have I done? The villain broken. If Gigantomachia didn't suddenly turn heel to join the side of the heroes, it would have been over. If Dabi didn't turn his brain off and become a nuclear weapon, it might have been over. Though I am more forgiving of this one, as mentioned earlier. If Spinner didn't turn into a hulking monster who can't think for himself, he might have been able to offer some actual counter-arguments to Shoji. If we didn't make Shiki for one absurdly stupid, he might have actually been able to keep Bakugo dead. Sorry, spoiler. We'll get to that soon. If Dr. Karaki wasn't a stupid asshole and made a bullet that would just kill all for one, he would have just flat out won. If Toga's clones could use their quirks, the world would have ended. Over and over again, the villains have to act uncharacteristically stupid or have their powers change in a fight. And it's just disappointing. This is the end of the story. This is the last time we have to see these people really go off. Dabi is somewhat exempt from this, but Gigantomachia didn't really do anything besides get one tapped. AFO didn't use his massive wealth of quirks besides hitting really hard. Shigaraki never really gets the opportunity to shine, and the devastation we expect from Toga feels only half given. But given this asked-for reason that she has to truly love them or something, while the villains regularly get their intellectual power stripped, heroes get literally revived mid-battle. Toga can only use part of the Twice quirk, and that she can make copies, but those copies cannot use their quirks like Twice can because her bloodlust mixed with her love, so it didn't work. I have no fucking idea what this means, but that's the facts. We got most of the bad out of the way, so let's get into the plotline itself, which is good. I know I was just saying that the villains were arbitrary in every encounter so far, and that is still true for Toga's quirk, but Toga vs. Ochako allows for quite literally the only dialogue we see between heroes and villains in this arc. As Toga attacks Ochako for never knowing what it's like for having a livable life, and we further submit that the safety nets for hero society are severely lacking, focusing on normalcy rather than having a like her, a person who wants to express love differently. Toga would drop the line, does everyone else just fight the urge to be the way that they want to be? And it leads us to an interesting lens we can view Toga and Ochako plotline through. Toga herself seems to be a pretty clear allegory for LGBT experiences, being impugned by her parents for not being normal, being seen as strange for her preferences, having to go outside of social norms to find a place to belong, and her wondering what love is like for other people, and if they too fight their own urges. And I mean, of course this plotline has this panel of Ochako calling her cute. MJ has had some pretty decent LGBT representation, especially for a shonen manga, which is not really known for having that type of content. Toga has pretty obviously been by for quite a while, so this method of viewing her plotline isn't necessarily surprising, but it's cool for a shonen to have openly LGBT characters that can still also be their own compelling characters, or to have actual trans rep through Tiger and Magne, though Magne is literally one of two League of Villains deaths, and some people argue that the way her trans turns are portrayed is kind of bad. It's a pretty big leap for your standard anime content that usually uses LGBT characters as the butt of a joke, and I can appreciate MHA for its pretty progressive view on, well, some things. So this is obviously where we get to the only elephant in the plotline, and it's the stab. Of course, Toga is trying to kill her, That's not the surprising part, but what's surprising is the absurd lack of consistency when it comes to durability in My Hero Academia. Now, this is not an issue in MHA alone, of course, that would be very silly to claim otherwise. What is bewildering to me is how Horikoshi wants me to believe how this one stab from a pretty moderately sized knife spells the near death of Ochako, whereas in PLW, Deku blew his body to bits and managed to keep fighting with no limbs, or Bakugo getting impaled 4 times and worse than Ochako, but still continuing on. All Might supposedly had his guts removed in his fight with All For One, but still essentially killed him. Bakugo literally got manhandled by Shigaraki, but kept going before his part got punched out. Okay, I'm sorry, spoilers, yeah. Brian Torino, who is a fossil literally recovered from deep sea samples, survived getting punched through his gut, which makes up like half of his fucking body. Mirko has lost every single limb, including one's re-added to her, as she kept fighting. What is this? Well, I know what it is. It's Horikoshi's half-assed way of working towards the conclusion of this plotline. But surely there is a better way to do this that doesn't make Ochako look so washed. We do get this really cool scene that I very, very much like about the League of Villains talking about villain names and trying to decide on one for Toga. Shigaraki interjects and says that he doesn't want one, and Toga agrees with that because she just wants to be Himiko Toga, not hide behind an alias. I absolutely love this little section, and holy shit do I miss when the League of Villains was actually a group of characters that interacted even though it hasn't happened for over 100 chapters besides through flashbacks. I love the concept of the two characters who are most about being themselves and wanting their own things in life are the ones that reject having a villain name or alias. It's super on-brand and really cool. After this, Toga would impugn Ochako, actually strawmanning her purpose for being here to arguing against society itself. You're supposed to just accept your circumstances. If you try to change them, you get thrown in a cage or killed. Obviously, Ochako isn't agreeing with this and she's standing there now, trying to pick away at her origin, but Toga is blinded by anger, and some of that anger being justified. Wait, did I just say a villain is justified? Well, here is when we get into the rest of it. Discourse about not just Toga and Ochako, but My Hero Academia's villains at large. Videos and posts all around the internet saying that Horikoshi is trying to wash away all their crimes. Even though I think My Hero Academia Act 3 is a real stinker, it at least so far has never done that. There is often a conflation between reason and justification. You see it a lot with Toga because both the story and some fans point out how she has been failed by the system at large. Narrative must be, in fact, saying Toga did nothing wrong, but multiple characters in universe disagree with that. The two characters on the front lines of saving the villains, Midoriya and Ochako, both reference how Tomura and Toga's crimes can never be undone or forgiven, but they are still on the path of understanding the root of it all. Notably, not justification, simply understanding. Some of the fandom's response to the villain's history just reads as a massive lack of empathy, especially considering a lot of the things the villains experience are just straight-up allegories to real-life issues like LGBT discrimination, racial discrimination, lack of social safety nets, abusive households, and generational trauma. This lack of empathy also leads to a metric shit ton of people just going, these people should be executed. Now, look, the villains in MHA have done terrible, horrible things. They've destroyed cities and murdered maybe hundreds of people. However, I still don't think that these people should be executed if it can be avoided. If there comes a situation where someone can literally not be stopped, all methods have been tried, but they are still hell-bent on killing other people, I can understand the feeling of perhaps taking their life. However, understanding or even wanting someone dead is not quite the same as allowing the state the power to extrajudicially take a life. The most common counter-argument I run into when saying that maybe we shouldn't kill people is, well, you would want to kill someone if they hurt your family. Good news, man. I'm not the government. I'm not granting the state the power to take a life without due process. Execution and a self-defense killing are two drastically different topics, and I don't care how many people they killed, the government shouldn't execute them. Not even from just a moral perspective, though I find that one awfully compelling, but from a narrative perspective. Imagine going through all the work to save these villains, then the next chapter drops, and they're all in the electric chair with no satisfying follow-through. No satisfying, and they just start steaming from their ears. Unless a story is banking on heavy realism, which, if we were, then their execution would be 15 each, I will always prioritize the narrative over any type of realism because in Japan, they will be put on death row. But this isn't real-life Japan. It's a story that is trying to tell itself and its messages, and a lot of time to deliver those messages effectively, realism must be buffed. Having Toga just die at the end of all this would just be an unsatisfying mess of the story, but we'll get to that later. Apparently, Ochako loves to see people smile, and that's when she declares that she is jealous of Toga and gets to smile about the things that she loves, and what makes her truly happy. Really putting a nice bow on the idea that this is a plotline about suppression. It was pretty explicit before, but yeah, there we go. Ochako accepting that she has been suppressing her feelings and saying out loud for the first time that she does love Midoriya is what allows her to have a quote awakening. Some might call this contrived, but this is cool. Rewarding characters for completing their arc can be pretty neat. As her powered-up corpse spreads and makes all the Twices float, Ochako offers Toga her own blood if that's what it takes to help her reintegrate, once again proving that there are options for her besides execution. Ochako also finally brings up her poor parents, which apparently Hori forgot about, even though it's the entire backbone of her character arc. People just don't pay that much attention to her characters. And for the first time, instead of heroes going, "Shut up, idiot, you have no friends," they actually respond to the villain. There is an actual dialogue between two characters in My Hero Academia in current day. Actually insane. Toga finally opens up as Ochako successfully reaches out, taking the first big step into saving the villain. She would point out that the signs for Toga were always there. It just took so long for her to notice, and I imagine this is supposed to be a reference to Hero Society also letting all these people slip through. However, if that's the case, I wouldn't really agree with that analogy, because the concept it's plainly obvious that the systems at play are very aware that these people are falling cracks or turning ability. But the main contributing factor for continuance is the profit incentive. Heroes are a commodity to be bought and sold, so there is economic incentive to creating villains or allowing villains to be created. The only time people actually gave a shit about Ochako versus Toga was the MIT page, which is pretty sad, because, of course, it's a nice conclusion to their conflict. It was only gas on Twitter because, oh my gosh, they might be gay, so now the plotline is good, even though everyone spent the better part of, the past 5 years ignoring it. Very obvious reasons why it got cast down.
This guy, life switches it on everything. One day, next day, and I tell you guys,
as Ochako takes Toga's hand and they float towards the ground, Toga runs out of Twice's blood, and Twice all begin to respawn. We cut to Hawks, who confronts a Twice clone as it goes away, and he says, "Fair enough, Jin was a decent guy." Dude, shut the fuck up. The man you murdered, the man you immediately demanded be killed right this second, and now you think you get to say he was a good guy? Okay. Now, Hawks is a much stronger Icarus allegory than we thought, because it wasn't just him who tanked towards the Earth, but his character too. Perhaps the biggest fall-offs of My Hero Academia. As the apparently lethal knife wound on Ochako slowly trickles blood, it's determined that, yep, she's gonna die. So Toga takes some of her blood to transform into her to do a blood transfusion to save her life, allegedly sacrificing herself, and the plot ends until the epilogue. Yeah, we're left on Toga possibly being dead for a... The people with Horikoshi's long dog homage of miles deep in their throat would say that her dying is peak fiction because it's poetic. Sane people, however, realized how stupid this was. Before the final war really kicked into high gear, Horikoshi said that Ochako's role in this coming battle would be as a light of hope. I don't really think it would be a super hopeful character trait to literally fail, and not fulfill the conclusion of your character arc by failing to save someone. The character that had their arc about saving heroes kickstarted by the death of Nine-Eye. Repeating that same event, but on a much more personal level, is an unfathomable loss. Of course, that isn't the only argument, but as Toga gives up her life, she decides on her own that there is still no place in this society for someone like her. There is no world where that is being saved. If the story's brilliant idea is to agree with that conclusion, it might as well just say that you can never atone for the wrong you've done, and you might as well kill yourself. Something it literally subverted with stopping Endeavor's suicide mission. It's still not atonement.
What the fuck is that?
Addressing what to do with these people in society. It's easier to say, well, they just sort of die, rather than to address systemic failings. It's kind of crazy because the fandom is so vehemently against the idea of Toga's because she has killed millions and deserves the death penalty, but will turn around and slam their dicks into the wall by accident on the way there to defend Lady Nagant, who has more than likely killed more people than any member of the villains combined. But that's cool because, she killed people for the state. When the state does it, it's cool and good. You show any resistance to flipping, you're in danger.
No, it's because she has big boobs, lol.
It would be a horrendous stain on Ochako's character, quite literally never achieving a single thing throughout My Hero Academia, besides yelling on a rooftop and stopping Deku's rampage. Both 800 chapters apart, by the way. Okay, but Toga lives then? She goes to jail. My Hero Academia's prison system doesn't really seem exemplary, which is another fear of mine. I don't really know it doesn't have to be a soul-crushing institution that is designed to keep you there. This is just a uniquely American idea. But not American prison, you might have the opportunity to witness a world that is created to support people, like having been saved rather than allowed to die. There's also the take that Toga will be a cautionary tale for a better future, something that is quite literally by the bad guys in the bad guy arc, Veteran Liberation Army. Curious wants to kill her and use her as a martyr for the future, and the MLA are notably not good guys. They are in fact significantly closer to the idea of fascism than anything else in the story. It is clear that in a future MHA world, Toga would just be locked in solitary, but given tools to perform. And even if she never truly gets to go outside of that prison, she still gets the chance to get better, along with Ochako and probably Midoriya at some point. So it's not like she will be completely isolated, but she will be and inspired that change in her, and are helping build a world of immensity of Togas. Ochako and Toga's battle is probably the best in the entire arc. That might not inspire confidence in some people, but it's quite good. I can only imagine how much better it would have been if Oi didn't decide to shove Ochako through most of the series. Toga is more than just a crazy yandere, and Ochako is more than just, haha, my parents are poor, or haha, I love Deku. And there's a lot to appreciate by the end, even if you don't know all of it. If Toga's dead, this fucking blows though, but I guess we won't know until we get to the epilogue section. No, don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead. This is a fight between, well, everyone and Shigefo, again. A lot of this arc kind of follows the same footsteps as PLW, leading me to wonder if the trigger was pulled on the major war arc a little too early. It's a bunch of people beating up Shigaraki and trying to prevent him from using K, and making sure Erasure stays active while Manual waters the eyes of the user. It's almost 1-to-1, man. This fight really exemplifies the issue with My Hero Academia's ever-expanding power. Shigaraki is just far too powerful. A lot of very powerful characters don't detect when they use their biggest attacks on him, causing this super uninteresting blue ball chatter and a general pattern of big hype attack that does nothing into them getting bodied. This is also where I feel a general weakness of the narrative comes up, and it solely has to do with regeneration. Regeneration allows the story to get away with pretty lazy or uninteresting slugfests, where one guy spends most of the fight getting absolutely whooped, but it doesn't really matter because he just regenerates, and there aren't many tactics involved because of it. The only tactic for Shigaraki, man, do not let him touch the ground so he can't decay. It very much compounds the issue we spoke about in Act 1, about My Hero Academia not having very interesting fights, because the choreography is almost non-existent. This problem existed in PLW, and it might have put off some people. For me personally, it was still a novel enough concept that was just the sheer idea of Shigaraki fighting like 10 dudes, as hype as it is. To make matters worse for Shigaraki's power scaling, flips an ability that can subvert Erasure, Go-Go Gadget, grow a bunch of fucking fingers. This is the answer to the plotline that was brewing in the background. The primary way to subvert the singular Doomsday Theory is to grow.
I'm glowing.
This entire sequence is basically a superpowered Shigaraki kicking the absolute shit out of anyone as he monologues about his ideal society. This is also indicative of a trend of My Hero Academia that started as far back as PLW. The villains would make a lot of points and arguments about the failings of the status quo, and the response would be, "Ah, you suck, I'm gonna hit you really hard, here's my asshole." Multiple characters do this. She really did want to write a somewhat valid perspective on the struggles of hero society without offering any substantive response. It's not something that really inspired confidence in how everything would be wrapped up either. At this point in time, a lot of people consuming My Hero Academia were quite afraid that the solution to the issues of hero society would be solved by punching a Shigaraki really hard. And when every character that got involved in discussion was so unempathetic and surface level, either means that this will also be the series' approach to it, or Deku will suddenly become the only beacon of human emotion in the entire series, while everyone else is fucking heartless. You know, it's kind of fucking insane that Mirio was at some point considered someone who could be the next symbol of peace, and someone that rivaled Midoriya considering his character essentially despawned until PLW, despawned again, and didn't show up for most of the Shigaraki fight just to contribute nothing besides twerking. How the mighty have fallen. Better words do, despite me liking almost nothing but the spite of the sections, start finding ways to contribute to the battle, and hoping to spread a positive narrative amidst the tragedy is cool. It'd be a shame if the story repeated this like 1,000 fucking times. Bakugo starts to fight Shigaraki and gets absolutely fucking disrespected, and his body gets kind of discarded in a funny way. Let us go ahead and flash back to the Paranormal Liberation War arc. Deku, being extremely reckless with his own body, was pounding Shigaraki to a pulp and blowing himself to bits. Bakugo kind of fruitlessly saved him, but imparted some solid advice onto him. Stop trying to release on your own. As Deku was on the verge of losing both his arms and his legs were flapping around like leaves in the wind, he was still trying to carry everything to not be useless. We had an entire arc, at the start of this act, that was about not doing super reckless shit that will destroy your body and everything attempt to do it yourself. Bakugo was at a forefront for this, saying that he knows better than anyone what Deku might resort to, especially with someone like All Might, who also had the same trait for a lot of his life. His arc, for all of his faults, was correct on this assessment of Deku's character. Despite everything, as Gina says in this fight with fake Shigaraki, Bakugo gets back up even though his face has been punched off and his arm is twisted like Farfalle. He gets back up to challenge someone he has no hope of beating. He gets a Quirk Awakening or a power-up or something, I don't even know because Quirk Awakenings are super poorly defined, and manages to hit Shiggy for once. And he gets really, really mad about this, seeing images of the second user of one ball, as if Bakugo is actually a threat, before he punches Bakugo so hard that his ribs shatter, his lungs explode, his heart pops back up, and I assume his back is fractured because literally all of this gear on his back dramatically blows to pieces and flies off, and he just fucking dies. So, this is obviously not perfect. Like I said before, Bakugo is kind of spitting in the face of quite literally everything he said or did during PLW and Villain Hunt. Because of Deku's recklessness, Bakugo felt the need to take a powerful hit from him, basically stating, "Your lack of self-consideration is hurting the others." Even though Deku probably could have dodged this in this particular incident, but let us ignore that for the sake of convenience. And we get an entire arc of the dangers of putting your body on the line with others, only for Bakugo to literally do the exact same thing. But unlike Deku, doesn't get the courtesy of a warning from his friends, he literally dies. It makes Villain Hunt look even more like a joke than it already was, but I don't entirely hate Bakugo's death here. I think if we just ignore this spot of his character, it's a really touching moment of him going against what would be expected of him from the very beginning of the series. Bakugo, the douchebag kid, gets a very emotional send-off where he finally accepts that he may not be able to reach the heights of Deku. Despite that, he tries to be a hero and stop Shiggy for one. In a sense, the power of the rewards him for his thoughtlessness, and we get a moment at the end of it all where Prince has a chance to ask for an autograph on his All Might card. I've talked a lot about how My Hero Academia took significant damage to its stake from W to now, and this was the closest we had ever come to the series seemingly trying to repair that. Someone took substantial damage, enough to literally kill them, and honestly, there's really no point of this set dressing, because if you're watching this video, you probably won't know, Bakugo starts to get revived 2 chapters later. It's just awful. Genuinely, at this point, probably the worst thing the series has ever done. Of course, the mutant stuff would come later, but at this point, this was terrible. Reviving a character you just created a send-off for is bad.
There's so many Amethyst Geodes, and they're all nowhere near where I currently am.
Horrendous. The series puts on this big theatrical show about how the old heads should be looking out for the next generation, and like, where the fuck was this loser when Nejire, Tamaki, and Mirio were getting their shit pushed in? Are they damaged goods because they are 18 years old now, Horikoshi? It also rings hollow when we're so hyper-focused on protecting the next generation that we are just losing one of the top heroes to do it, because apparently Headshot can just revive someone, and we'll get to the logistics of this revival later, because holy fuck do they suck. Let's think of it like this. In the battle for essentially the world, a kid dies, and yeah, that's terrible. And we have the means to revive him, apparently. Do we A, try to continue stalling until Deku can arrive the fight as planned, and then take care of everything? Or B, do we take one of the top heroes out of commission to do open heart surgery in the middle of a battlefield where one dude's punch has the power to blow away, and the battlefield is constantly getting destroyed every day, and then the building starts falling out of the sky? The amount of hoops Horikoshi had to jump through and the sheer absurdity of this entire situation created truly cannot be understated. I hate this part of the story so much it's unbelievable. But before we move on to the next fight, we gotta talk about Shiggy for fun. I'll be honest with you, I'm still really not into it. Shigaraki is just more interesting, and I don't enjoy the watered-down version of him we get as AFO is also occupying his super brain. It also means we get very silly scenes of little Tenko showing himself because he gets mad that Mirio says he's friendless, and he mentions his dog instead of, like, his actual friends he has in real life, robbing us of even more Shiggy thinking about his friends. Well, that fight sucked. Let's get into the final 2 fights. Surely, they'll be better. This battle is character assassination to a new level. The man who was talking about finding a will to live, suddenly donning a suit of power armor. And he's committing suicide. We'll have to roll back the clock for the second to last time here. Wow, we're almost at the end. Right around the final portion of the final Totoro from a confrontation, All Might kickstarts Shoto with the resolve to go help Endeavor deal with Toya. The ever-reminding All-for-One rampages across Japan in pursuit of Shigaraki to help him steal One for All and to finally take over his body for real. Tsukauchi would yell out that nobody is around to stop All-for-One's rampage anymore. All of the heroes are down, and the rest are still fighting their own battles. What can stop one of the strongest men in the world? I know, a nearly dead 55-year-old man. You might ask where this comes from. Well, if you pay close attention in the Villain Hunt arc, you'll notice All Might hold. Yes, that briefcase was actually a fucking Iron Man suit of armor. Now, I have talked extensively about All Might's character on this channel, and I think I'm one of the only content creators to ever do so that isn't the surface level, should have died from Kamino stuff. Besides a few very dedicated All Might accounts on Twitter, He never really got any consideration when it came to analysis of the series, and I like to think that I paved the way for thoughts on All Might's character in that regard. I wrote a thread that was my most popular ever about his role in the story, and it's apparently good enough that it got plagiarized bar for bar by CBR a few years ago. To briefly summarize my
Nice.
thoughts on All Might, I viewed him as a cautionary tale about Deku's current character state going into Act 3. All Might had spent his entire life in
Is there a way for me to
heroism, abandoning his life and
move
becoming
the
disciplined
HUD
to the extent that he was
for the
willing to run the
gun?
clock
Because
and
that's
effectively
kind of
himself.
where my
This left him with only people he kept at arm's
sound
length, having no
subtitles
weapons.
are.
After he finally lost One for All in his great battle with All for One, he could no longer do the hero work that he threw himself into for his entire life, and he had to witness the consequences of his ideology. Having society only lean on a single man led to unimaginable consequences after that man's collapse. He could do nothing to stop the cataclysmic effect of his fall, and everything he believed in and represented began to decay before his very eyes. His individualistic, self-destructive mindset and tendency to hide the aim way through came to a boiling point. Near the end of Act 2 of My Hero Academia, we see All Might talk to Aizawa about finding his purpose and telling him about how he has decided to live, but that the feeling of helplessness and powerlessness bubbles up inside of him. Aizawa tells him what he needs to hear most. Being Toshinori is all he needs to do. As long as he lives and is there for them, that's all that push those kids forward. This leads us into Villain Hunt, where All Might is forced to feel the blowback of the ideology he cultivated in a kid like Midoriya. Just like Toshinori used to, Deku went out of his way to shoulder everything on his own, to hurt himself, so nobody else has to be hurt. And All Might stumbles across Deku's broken mask on the ground, the mask that was made to imitate All Might's smile. That's when Stain appears to tell All Might that it had nothing to do with his power that he became so loved. It's not the power that marks the difference between All Might and Toshinori Yagi, but his beliefs. Aizawa told him that he just has to survive, and Stain told him that he has to keep being a hero to his kids. Of course, being a hero is something My Hero Academia has established to be not just something you do through power. The kids exemplified heroism by putting on the concert for the way kids after so many terrible events. This arc has been hitting us over the head with other methods of heroism as well, like with the business course recording the fight. All Might had to carve a path forward as a different kind of hero, a powerless hero for the kids he had inspired, while trying to unlearn the self-destructive behaviors he still has, and he has seen been instilled in the next generation, through Midoriya, while trying to realize that Toshinori is worth more than he can do. Or, he can put on a suit of armor. The reason for this lengthy preamble is, like I said, because my takes on All Might were overwhelmingly popular in the My Hero Academia community at the time. How I regularly spoke about how All Might's future is off the battlefield, and instead involved in these kids' lives, but the second this fucking suit of armor came on, I apparently never understood the story. I cannot stress enough just how much I fucking hate this development sincerely, and how counterintuitive this is to All Might's entire arc about not killing himself and finding a way forward as a hero. A man finding a place without power, and his conclusion is an omega powerful suit of armor to fight one of the strongest men in the world. What makes this feel even more fucking asinine is how literally right before putting on the suit of armor, he was doing exactly what I was referencing. He inspired Shoto and Ida to kick me into high gear and get to the next Todoroki family brawl just to, like, a dumb fuck immediately after. There are a couple of things relating to the groundwork issues Iron Mike presents to the story. First things first, My Hero Academia fans around the world, myself included, had collectively deluded themselves into believing that without a quirk you can't be a capital H hero, as in the profession of hero, not a hero in itself. You simply wouldn't be able to stand up to the big dogs. However, all of us ignored Knuckle Dust and the abilities on purpose because nobody read it and it's lame, and all of us conveniently ignored the superhuman things that your average human is capable of. Stain and Eraserhead, despite having no physical enhancements or quirks to boost their physical stats, are capable of absurd feats. This leaves us with two options. One, that quirkless people are just as capable of being a professional hero as anybody else, or two, that quirks boost baseline abilities, which we have no real consistent grounding for. Considering All Might, while quirkless, it's a beating one of the strongest men in the world and is just fine, or more pressingly, all the times that having a quirk doesn't secretly stats, like Otaku taking one knife to go down. And now, of course, we have the existence of support gear that can go toe-to-toe with Final All for One. Previously, our understanding of support gear was that it existed primarily to boost the usage of one's quirk, or perhaps put up an extremely lackluster fight against something. Now, as we can see, a completely quirkless man who is basically on the verge of death at all times can just equip a lot of cool armor and survive a hit that one-shot Gigantomachia. It begs the question, why isn't this standard? Of course, All Might must have had to pay a lot for the suit, and he has connections to make something this powerful, but a fraction of its power would be completely good enough for average hero work. Why are the UA kids, who don't have to pay for their support gear in a school that seemingly has infinite money, not wearing gear that boosts them significantly? Doesn't have to be as powerful as the Agmite suit, as your average pro hero is not running into all for one. They are dealing with street thugs. Surely then, other high-ranking heroes could also be utilizing support gear like Endeavor, yet the most he wears are strange fire clothes and a blue jumpsuit. Perhaps he could have invested heavily into Young future. When My Hero Academia has giant man-made robots walking around that can pulverize city blocks, it's time for us to examine how armor like this has a possibility that essentially refused to explore until the keys jingled in front of his face to ruin All Might's character arc. A volume extra explicitly states that this was an extremely expensive endeavor, which is about the only thing it has going for it, but now, the possibility has been introduced, that with enough money and connections you can indeed be a capital H hero. Melissa Shield from the first movie as a child was literally able to make something that could withstand 100% of All Might's power at least a few times. Mei Hatsume created a replacement for these same gauntlets in like 30 seconds with a box of scraps, handling a large chunk of the power output. And I remind you once again, most pro heroes are not in situations where they need that much power output. The message that we're supposed to get here is that All Might was ultimately wrong when he told Deku that he couldn't be a hero initially. However, a lot of people have read this as All Might stating that he was wrong because all you need to be a hero, capital H hero, are your heroic ideals, the desire to save others. But this is again a conflation of the two types of hero. When All Might first shot down Deku, he wasn't saying that he couldn't have heroic tendencies. He was saying that without a quirk, it's just not realistic to be a capital H hero. But when he tries to save Bakugo, not only does All Might recognize this double meaning, he accepts that Deku can be both, but primarily because he can give him one for all, letting him know that he thinks he is a lowercase hero, and is now presenting him the option to be a capital H hero. Though note, in this initial rejection, he never says to become a stockbroker and buy a suit of armor, because any for 9 years can't be a capital H hero without a quirk. But a quirk isn't what makes someone a hero. To be frank, this isn't even the most insulting part of Iron Might. It's not the character regression because, of course, you can write that in as the point of the suit. You can have All Might be forced to examine his reckless behavior that he just makes with prior villain hunt, and it's not the inconsistency of the power system or the conflation of heroism. It's that it makes All Might a selfish asshole.
There isn't an ocean nearby at all.
This now held onto this extraordinarily powerful suitcase without telling a single person. Nobody here has made it clear that they were very aware of Iron Might's suit, and at no point did All Might take it into consideration for the plans to literally save the world. At the risk of foregoing modern society or the lives of the students and peers, All Might opted to simply hold onto this insanely powerful armor for content. Let's go back and recap the final war order with the context of All Might having a suit of armor that can stop one of the strongest men in the world. All Might watched Midoriya, crux of the entire operation, get pulled through across the entire nation, and decided to sit there for content. All Might sat in his office checking the stock market as one of his most treasured students, Bakugo, got punched so hard he exploded and died. He then proceeded to invest in cryptocurrency while the pro hero scrambled to try and revive him. All Might would then lose the remainder of his life savings on crypto while glancing over at his second screen and watching Endeavor not only lose his arm, but also watch All for One activate his super secret trump card and start rewinding. All Might would then open up a GoFundMe to recoup his losses while noticing that everything has gone wrong. Kirigiri has woken up, Dabi got back up, and Toga had activated Sandman's Parade. It wasn't until quite literally 11:59 of the Doomsday Clock that he decided to don the armor and still act entirely callous and borderline malicious to his only friend, Tsukauchi, who has been deeply concerned about All Might's well-being for years by opting to not tell Tsukauchi anything about the suit. Stop All for One without saying it. One can, and will, argue that All Might only waited this long because it's the backup plan. First of all, there was no plan. Nobody knew about this fucking thing. Second of all Might never knew that he would need to be a backup plan in case All for One starts rewinding, something that Ghost had zero clue about. There were a million different things that went wrong and could have prompted the backup plan. What might have worked out better would have been setting out Iron Man against All for One alongside Endeavor. Remember that this was the weakest All for One has ever been in universe. The two could have tag teamed him so hard that he wouldn't have had time to activate Rewind, or even if he did, all of them in their giant clash together would have likely been stopped to him. Let's also stop for a second. With future context and full hindsight of the war arc, I'm left with one question. Why was the plan to separate Shiggy and All for One? What if Shiggy and All for One were brought to the same place? Sure. Multiple targets because of the J arc. We also know that you don't need to maintain continuous eye contact because of, well, every single time they use. I know they are trying to prevent their shared mind space, but could they even access it while erased? If they are both cordless, what would the benefit even be? All for One's de-aging cord would also be erased, and he would hit the ground like SpongeBob and Patrick in SpongeBob. All for One would be utterly powerless, and Shigaraki would be in the same state as he already is. Of course, they weren't aware that he would start growing fingers. To compensate, you bring everyone you sent to Gunga to UA. Never, Hawks, Jiro, Tokoyami, and Shiketsu kids. Bring in Iron Man if you want. The landscape of the fight changes completely as All for One gets one-tapped eaten by an Ant-Man before the sun sets. And you now have all these powerful people to fight with Shigaraki. All Might and his uncharacteristic selfishness, ego, and carelessness almost led to quite literally the end of the world, but he got a really cool Twitch clip out of it, I guess. All Might was one of my favorite characters in the series, and now I can't look at it.
Hey, Septet of the Dead Princess is playing, lol. That's kinda fitting, honestly.
Makes sense. He's reverting and also melding with Shigaraki, which is making people more angry, of course, so I guess that's evil or something. I don't know. I can definitely accept AFO's behavior to make sense with the circumstances he is currently facing, but there's a giant element known as this fight. Shigaraki and PLW, and also in the Star Strike fight, utilize this little quirk here that interferes with electrical effects. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. Taking quite a few steps back, in PLW, Shigaraki now has the original All for One quirk, and All for One had possessed a copy. That means that whatever quirk Shigaraki has access to, so too does All for One. Why did All for One simply not shut off Iron Might's entire suit? Is he stupid? As the fight continues with the pretense of All for One could end this at any second if you can rub together two brain cells to access the core local thoughts, All Might charges straight at him and uses a fuck ton of random technology.
Maybe there'll be a better cave system to explore.
Oh, apparently electricity meddles with his mind gem. Why?
Say what you will about all the mods I've added in.
Let's fucking head, like, what is going on?
They've made exploring way more interesting and incentivized me to actually interact with the world in a more meaningful manner.
Therefore, the solution, according to All Might, is kill yourself. I guess we can take a brief cut here to talk about Ayama because he needs some content.
That I would rather try to find. I would, if I could, use fun methods to get my stuff rather than try to go for the most optimal method. In which case, rather than strip mining, I am electing to explore.
It's kind of crazy that nobody really talks about how stages came away like this. This is a lot of people's favorite fight. So it shows up for a couple pages, it's one-tapped. This fight is definitely the top 3 most things about the fight. He completely flipped the house on its head for the sake of a cool moment. Makes All for One appear to be more incompetent than he could. Tried to half-ass some form of stakes by moving backstage and killed him. It's effectively
What the fuck?
Many chapters, while hoping we don't think twice about this 55-year-old man on death's door getting his ass whooped and completely assassinates any consistent form of characterization from All Might. For this was one of my favorites. Horikoshi looked at the FBI and essentially told me to think that All Might committing amounts to suicide is supposed to be badass with all these raw panels of the screen is deranged. I won't discount the possibility that we're supposed to think this was deranged, since we can argue with someone falls in line with our statements about the usual not upon things, but that feels at odds with what's on screen, and especially since, at the current time, All Might suffered no real consequences for this fight. The common question I get is, well, what did you expect All Might to do? Just sit back as everything went to shit? And the answer is, yeah. Clearly, that is the preferable alternative to both All Might's character and the narrative at large. There are probably a ton of different ways this could have been executed that don't make me feel like this was putting two in the back of one of my favorite characters' heads. The suit of armor actually being a hologram that serves as a reminder of the message of All Might that haunts All for One is a drastically better alternative, while keeping him safe and showing that All Might has learned from the past and kept himself safe while still finding a way to save the day. But also the time limit. Somebody stop All for One, otherwise he would have made it to Shigaraki. That's a really good point. It's a shame that this is a fictional story where every single decision is made by an author, as we've already seen, because the author kept bending over backwards to change the rewind as we know it didn't have All for One rewind lots of times, but not very much other times. The only reason All Might had to step in and stop All for One is because the author decided that is what had to happen. The passage of time is not real in My Hero Academia, and Horikoshi could have just shaved a couple of minutes off of All for One's timer, especially considering all this stupid reckless shit did was by a minute or two and have Toshinori's near dead body to the dead moves Shigaraki fight to make things worse. But we finally made it. Can't really continue this conversation without touching on the final stage of My Academia. Watching straight through, this will be the time to get up and take a bed. This is going to be a long talking about, well, just about everything. this is one of those things where they're smart. Deku and Shigaraki's final fight feels very emblematic of everything wrong with My Hero Academia. I know that I might not have touched on many of the systemic issues in the series, but I think this fight is perfect. As this is when it became clear that MHA's final war arc isn't the final war of MHA. And a better way to put it is a final arc that utilizes the skeleton of My Hero Academia, foregoing the fat, muscle, nerves, and all. After Bakugo's, death, the heroes are forced, and I put the word forced in quotes there, to revive Bakugo as Shigaraki for one ravages them. With a few seconds remaining, Mirio shakes ass and shows us how the fight followed, and Deku finally arrives at his own battle. I feel like that there is some important context I would like to provide here. At this point, Deku was not even close to the character anymore after the villain had let down Aoyama's flamerization. So I went into the final war arc with the idea that whatever Horikoshi had cooking for me after the villain hunt will come to fruition, only to be quite literally immediately let down by his first action in the fight. He arrives at this fight, finally, he sees Bakugo has been punched so hard he exploded, and he looks around and sees how every hero around him has been beat to shit, and he has an understandable reaction, a mix of sadness, rejection, and anger. Him having a human reaction to seeing his childhood friend pretty much dead isn't what bothers me. It's how this is a direct repeat of PLW, and how that was supposed to be a learning experience. Of course, this arc in its entirety is a knockoff PLW, so that part isn't surprising, but the fact that Deku succumbs to his rage is complete character regression, and the repetition of a mistake he already made in the past that almost lost him everything. His rage moment in PLW was supposed to be a very overt mistake, especially when we think back to Banjo holding him not controlling his heart, something that this scene even flashes back to. But now, in the final arc, Midoriya should be at his most advanced after the fall and rise of PLW, PH, and its aftermath. It seems as if Midoriya hasn't learned a single thing. I'm sure someone's going to comment, well, what did you want him to do? He's just a 16-year-old little boy seeing his friend dead. It's a goddamn story, man. I just want some consistency. Deku's rage moment in PLW, while raw, almost led to the literal loss of the entire war. If the war didn't start when Shigaraki's body was unfinished, Deku would have just straight up died here. In Midoriya's last showing of the series, Horikoshi opted to sacrifice his competency as a main character and his developed character to instead make certain plot beats come to fruition or make raw shit happen on screen. Need I remind you that Midoriya is the linchpin of the entire hero operation, and the plan was already fucked up because the night worked once, leading to death and destruction, and now he was about to fuck it over again by immediately throwing for content. Now, even though I just said all this, I'm still fine with an initial outraged or deeply damaged reaction. The second issue is this glorified fucking janitor coming in and thinking we want to talk Deku down from the edge, robbing Deku of these more moments where he gets to be a competent and developed character. Instead of giving in at first and then thinking back to the PLW, back to how many people are depending on him, and understanding that giving into emotion like this is a mistake. He needs Mirio. What does he even do? Togata to tell him, hey, actually it's fine. Bakugo's being revived, I guess. Dude, just calm down. It's not that serious. Midoriya had already lost so much of his own agency and character at the end of Villain Hunt, and then he loses even more by becoming a machine designed to only output empathy in the traitor arc. And now at the start of this fight, he can't even fix his own mistakes and show that he has learned as a person. Instead, the final war arc completely backtracks on any and all progression made by the series prior. Remember how at the start of the section I said that this arc is the skeleton of MHA disregarding the substance? Midoriya Izuku is the most blatant example of the aspect that possibly exist. Even an arc that just happened in this final act that we talked about like an hour and a half ago doesn't matter anymore. Villain Hunt at the end of PLW had this big thing about Deku finding his own value as a person and as a hero in the power of one for all. Especially see that in the first Deku was Shigaraki, where he dehumanizes himself and sees himself only as a vessel to destroy all for one. In Villain Hunt, Midoriya is supposed to learn that this isn't correct. To boil himself down to only his power has disastrous consequences, and his friends come together to let him know that no matter what power he has, they don't care, because the person they like is Midoriya Izuku, not one for all. But this arc immediately backtracks to the idea by creating such a sauceless fight between Deku and Shigaraki, where Deku says literally only one thing of relevance throughout this multi-volume fight. No, not fight. Altercation. Staring contest. If you run through all of Deku's Shigaraki, no, you know what? I'm not even going to use hypothetical. I fucking did it. I scrolled through the entire fight, and I counted 18 individual thoughts of Midoriya's own throughout this entire fight that weren't just repetitions of the same thing you would think so. 4 of those were arguably introspective thoughts about his current situation. 1 I classified as other because it didn't really fit the categories, and 13 were thoughts about One for All, or the fight itself. 72% of Deku's individual thoughts were about One for All. Izuku sure is a character that intakes and reacts to external stimuli, I guess. This current version of Midoriya is such a stark difference from the introspective, deeply lost in thought rambling Midoriya, as his Act 3 version says nothing besides battle plans and repeats his goal of wanting to save that crying boy like every page turns. Gone is the Deku who would try to find a way other than fighting to save others. Gone is the Deku who scouts his Kuma and heals the gentle, and let him know that nobody is mocking as he tries to get to his origin. Gone is the Deku who had confused thoughts about his vulnerability, his power. Hello, one for all. I've almost started to wonder if Horikoshi considered Deku done. Like, Villain Hunt was his character, and there was nothing left besides reaching his goal of saving Shigaraki. There was this interview with Horikoshi as well as Kubo, the other Bleach. Kubo would know that he was taken aback by how Deku was such a worry force, but after getting it makes sense. Horikoshi replied that at first, he thought Deku's plainness wasn't appealing. In fact, he wonders, why did I make him so boring? And I feel like that hits home the shift in Deku as a character. What we found to be deeply inspiring. Emotional and introspective, Horikoshi considered the goal boring and turned him into a thoughtless, powerful loser, and Villain Hunt would be a send-off to this in-depth, well-thought-out character arc. This can be especially felt when we examine Deku's power compression, something that was really fundamental to his character journey and is what locks a lot of people in at the start. Seeing him go from blowing his lips up to remaining in 5% of his power, to 8% of it, to 20% of it in Air Force, developing his own unique fighting styles to separate himself from All Might's, which he never uses again. Of regret and regression when Black Whip emerges, and it's all just All Might. After POW, Midoriya has been effectively upgraded to 100% without actually saying it. As we saw him, he had a couple of quirks with using 45% max. He was haphazardly given Fajin and Gear Shift, which arbitrarily shoots him beyond All Might level, because I guess watching him grow and learn was too gloomy and boring. A once methodical boy who thought he'd made too much by the circumstances and surrounding him, blowing himself to bits as he tries to come to terms with his power, has ironically enough, considering his name, been hollowed out into a narrative puppet that has nothing to think or say besides how to immediately press the
That shit impaling sucks.
hastily resolved just so we could get to this final fight. And it was not even close to worth it. Messages. Oh, God, the fucking messages, man. This might go down as one of the biggest fuck-ups in this story. We'll get into the specifics of messages and how they interact with the power system relatively soon, but as characters, these guys fucking suck. We had this path of discovery from Midoriya when it came to bonds with Black, which made the progression development of that power field to be nice and rewarding. And with all these other fucking guys like Lana, she's cool. Literally, what did they even do? Any development that was possible, Sukuro disagreed with the plan of saving Shigaraki, was stamped out by a hasty handful of pages of conclusion. And beyond that, their only purpose is to exposition dumps to understand all this magic shit, and when they're not doing that, they are completely trampling over Midoriya as a character in its entirety. While Deku doesn't do a single second of thinking, and messages do it all for him in a really insulting way. Deku has no plan to actually win this fight, for some reason, so the messages come for him. The plan involves killing up one fall to break in Shigaraki's core, which he doesn't come from himself. Midoriya doesn't get to comment on the fact that he is going to part ways with overall, Shimura does for some reason. All the people around Midoriya get to comment on everything about the situation, including Midoriya himself. In Villain Hunt, Lady Nagon criticizes Deku for not being able to see past his own nose, being tainted by Hero Society itself, and not recognizing the inherent flaws at all. It mentions that even if Midoriya brings back the status quo, without a plan beyond that and without any real convictions, all he will be doing is bringing back the system that embeds so much suffering. And all Midoriya does in this arc is prove them right. Makes lofty declarations about when to save Shigaraki, but has not a single fucking clue how to actually implement that. It's being guided by long-lost ghosts to a conclusion that was supposed to make him unique. Oh, Bakugo's up. Okay, yeah, alright, let's talk about him real quick. I didn't. While Deku vs. Shigaraki is underway, One for All drags All Might's stupid suicidal ass in the fight, putting a lot of pressure on Deku on how he's supposed to save All Might, steal off for one if it was Shigaraki. That's when Bakugo started getting open heart surgery like 40 minutes ago in this video, gets back up. Just in time to save All Might from AFO. Now, if you were around in MHA's communities before the end, most people had assumed that wishing energy was a concept created by a dying man trying to reconcile why his form failed him. A lot of people online assumed that Nani's cord just couldn't work properly in the presence of another time-manipulating power, but now, hundreds and hundreds of chapters later, we know about wishing energy, and it's real. If you wish for something hard enough, things will change. I guess humans didn't wish to stop being victims of oppression hard enough. I guess the villains didn't wish for their economic and social conditions to change hard enough. Maybe little Koda should have wished harder for his parents than have been killed by Muscular. Honestly, skill issue. Wishing energy, causes All Might's fate to lose, as he was originally going to be killed by All for One. Right here, Bakugo gets back up with his poorly put back together body and saves him right on time. That's right. The guy who got hit so fucking hard, his body imploded, got back up, and Ochako is down for the rest of the arc. Honestly, skill issue. Edge shot exits Bakugo's body. I don't know sounds as a little fucking worm guy, edge worm, and he just flops around like a fish out of water. And what's funny is that his entire plan that basically destroyed the blade fight to go to Bakugo and restart his heart didn't work. He stitched his heart up to be able to start it. However, with the stars, a bead of sweat entered Bakugo's fucking chest hole, entered his bloodstream, and exploded in his heart, reviving him. No, this is not a joke. The entire plan was completely fucking pointless besides yet another shonen jump cliffhanger. The biggest part about this isn't even the absurdity of the moment. The Glazers going online and talking about how this revival makes sense because nitroglycerin is a heart medication. I implore them watching this to try and give nitroglycerin to a dead person. It's not going to. Also, why the fuck is he not blood rate? Toga might be dead because of this. Oh, anyway, Bakugo's back somehow, and he's fighting All for One for some reason. This fight feels so fucking meaningless. The two have almost zero relationship outside of one encounter. They have no relationship, no back and forth, and it's just action figures slapping into each other. Okay, pop quiz. Was what I just said about Deku versus Shigaraki or Bakugo versus Dangle? The only thing that Hori Dangles in front of us two meaning clearly is that Bakugo looks like the second. Yep, that's it. See, my first impression was that AFO was so angry because something about One For All was standing up to him just like Kudo once did, but I guess that really wasn't accurate because that was the entire arc, so it really is just because he looks like Kudo. Wow, that's stellar fighting. The amount of power Bakugo is putting out in this fight is genuinely insane, and it's really funny that both pre-death and post-death receives power-ups to be able to hang with the big boys, because otherwise, what does he even do? Also, his new power-up, not to be confused with his old one, or the older one, it is based primarily on the concept of him hurting himself, and all I can do in this arc is look back at Bell Hunt and go, what the fuck was even the point of it? Hurting yourself is cool, actually. That's why Iron Mike is badass, and Bakugo killing himself and getting a power from it is so wrong. I will never forgive people for thinking I was wrong. This fight is also when I started to look back at Bakugo and go like, what was even the point of this character? He serves no function for the primary theme of saving villains. In fact, he is now 1-1 in terms of killing and being killed. He has no conversation with Midoriya when it comes to saving villains, but Ochako wants to save a villain, and Shoto wants to save his brother. Bakugo isn't even involved in this plotline. He's barely involved in the One For All plot. He barely has any connections to any of the villains and doesn't have his own. Now, I don't want you to think that just because Bakugo doesn't have a purpose here, he sucks, because not all characters are going to find their theme, and some characters will serve other purposes. That's totally fine. What's not fine is how Bakugo is shoved down the beach, thrown at every single opportunity. He's shoved into every plotline, he's shoved into dynamics, he's shoved into all marketing, like, shit, man, this is crazy. My impression of Bakugo's character was that he was supposed to serve a cautionary tale of a hero upbringing, how the constant drive from type of kid to be abusive, littling, and egotistical, to show how someone like Endeavor can come. Bakugo was supposed to stop in his tracks, look at the damage he was inflicting far earlier than Endeavor, and see himself in Energy's wave of destruction pursuing the number one spot, and understand that isn't suitable. To understand that sometimes can't be, and that's perfectly fine. And that's what Bakugo was about. And in his totally heterosexual last moments, he wondered if he could keep up with Deku. But that's completely halted because boom, here you go. Go kill the big bad after receiving a trillion power-ups that you could even hope to share with Doria's permanently growing power in One For All. Go ahead and take the spotlight from the kid you were a little and say, hey, you know what, maybe I still can't surpass Deku. Even though, like, I had accepted that it was impossible, and accepted that I can't always have the spotlight, and accepted that I'm not him. I am him now. Deal with it. Also, I'm taking over his retrospective section. Yeah, man, I do not like Bakugo. This is where they get some AFO backstory that shows that
there's another cave near this village.
He was instead
I'll go explore that instead.
Circumstances. In a vacuum, I actually think this is solid stuff. It's the only AFO content I've enjoyed for years. But it does go to show that horror coaching at some point leads her to be activists afterward. An online AFO, which is supposed to represent simplistic concept of hero cloning. All Might not really changing, but All For One changing massively for some reason. Get more into AFO during the Shigaraki section. Speaking of AFO, he turns to the sperm and dies. Oh, okay, Shigaraki's out. By the time Shigaraki broke free of All For One's hold, he had been more or less absent from the story for 25 months, or nearly 100 chapters, so going to have to approach. So, how is Shigaraki's character absent for over 2 years? To begin, a character who got home is not an inherently bad thing. Like, I want that fresh that Ida hasn't had much to do over the course of My Hero Academia. That's not a big deal to me, but Shigaraki is not just some character. He is, or is supposed to be, the primary protagonist. And with those 25 real-life months, 100 chapters, anything is character. Yeah, that kind of sucks. It hurts to say it because Shigaraki was one of my favorites, but he got usurped by a far less interesting character. I'm supposed to believe that Shigaraki is the main antagonist that kind of failed. If I'm supposed to believe that All for One is now the main antagonist, well, kinda sucks. Shigaraki, a character with ties to the whole series and doesn't retreat to where he's going to Sheldon over 2 real life years, and then he finally breaks free from AFO's hold suddenly, and then his fight gets off screen for another year. So he was basically not a character for 3 years. All for One is just such an obvious turning point.
I think I want to just use a normal sword or spear. Anyway, revenge.
None of the evidence decision makes sense now. Like, you know, him not taking all of you to this fucking nursery. We go back and look at Ambrose' decision making.
What the?
The idea that he intended to take over Shigaraki. What was the point of, like, any of this? What was the point of Shigaraki building so much independence and his own ideas, relationships?
Oh no.
There's definitely an argument to be made that Ambrose here was to show how older generations sometimes just let go of it. That may still definitely be consistent with the passing of the tradition. Though I just like this, but this idea would feel far better executed if AFO was killed way prior to this, like Bloodline, and Shigaraki got his own character to the story, instead of AFO back, which showed that some older was let go of control within it, and you could still have it once on the new gen, like actually show facts 2 ways of 3. The staggering differences between our two antagonists is felt so much during the 2 small scenes we have with Rocky's turn. Shigaraki's aura, screen presence, and personality all outweigh All for One's calculating nature. His facial expressions, his dialogue, all appear so much more passionate and intense than anything they have ever done. Like Shigaraki rejected it's so cool. However, Shigaraki's full nature is undermined in this very much. Every time Shigaraki wants to stay cool, if not this moment, if someone else cuts in, stay cool, or we just cut away from the fight entirely. Shigaraki, back, cut to Toga, see a panel of him, cut to Iron Mike, see a panel of him, cut to Banko, don't worry, Shigaraki with one raw panel. When All for One finally turns into starting points, Shigaraki says he feels hateful to him? To the guy who groomed him? To the guy who took him over and tried to steal his body? This concept of Shigaraki still the attachment to All for One could be way more interesting in like a good manga, but this isn't one. As we'll see up on the series. Right before the final confrontation, Shigaraki steals Danger Sense and tells Midoriya to stop seeing him as a hero. An actual good crop of character. He calls back the flat place he wants to show Spider and tells him that there is a person inside of him. Over the mentioned in BLW, heroes speaking under. It's close to greatness. They just started to clash ideas of the world. Midoriya displays the king.
Whoa.
He wanted to, but he refuses. Shigaraki tells him Tenko was gone, and Nana tells Deku to kill him. Deku again refuses. This was the setup going into this final confrontation. Before we dive into the final fight, let's dive into the subplot. Yeah, it's over. It was off-screen and wrapped up in 2 minutes. Yep, that was fucking stupid. Okay, we get to the final fight. Let's talk about quirks as a power system, because genuinely, what is going on? Let's just run through the progression of quirks to see how much we've lost the plot. In early Act 1 and Arsec Sports Festival, quirks were pretty grounded as a power system. They were muscles in your body, had to exercise through repeated usage, just like the muscles. Of course, it would be dishonest to ignore things like Dark Shadow, which are pretty far removed from this concept, but there's a level of suspension of disbelief that you just gotta have for sci-fi power systems. Dark Shadow definitely sits on the thin edge now. As the series went on, this power system became increasingly the range. Quirks as powers themselves just grew into incomprehensible areas, starting with Dark Shadow, then moving to things like Overhaul, which is pretty crazy, then moving to things like Warp Surge, things like Reality, then Duel, and now Quirk Magic through the Vestiges, which is a whole topic we gotta get to. The concept of One for All having Quirk Vestiges was introduced back in Sports Festival. It is a now ancient concept. From back then, it wasn't really an inherently bad thing, but just like all things, what comes next is the execution of the idea. A quirk that melds with other quirks having access to sage spirits of Homer. It's definitely a stretch from the original, but it's cool. And there's a point where some assholes or stretches in suspension disbelief forgiven if it's something worthwhile. Obviously, this we can then infer that All for One would have access to the same experiment, since these two quirks interact uniquely with quirk factors. We then learn later on that One for All for One, because they both technically come from the same quirk, share a psychic dream space. Okay. We're getting a little freaky with it, but like I said, depending on execution, it can be cool. And since it was used to introduce the idea of crying Tango that Deku wants to save, we'll let it cook. Because of this quirk-invested shit, AFO was able to completely take over Shigaraki's control of his body, and, okay, I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility from what's been previously established, since at the sports festival, the Vestiges weren't able to interview with Deku's body without brainwashed by Shinso. We are likely stretching this concept to its absolute most, though. We then learned in the final act that because All for One copied his quirk and has the copy and gave the original to Shiki, he has a shared awareness with Shigaraki. Okay, how does that work? Wait a second. All Might can also feel the message even though his quirk was now, so it's not because AFO has the copy. Is he just stupid? Was his soul downloaded to the quirk? Wouldn't that mean that everyone who has had their quirk stolen using All for One also shares awareness with him? I'm starting to get a little confused here. Also, what the fuck is a quirk copy? How does that even work? How have All for One and Dr. Garaki had the capability of copying quirks for tens, if not 100 years, but nobody else does? How is that something that just flies under the radar? Quirk copying would be a tremendous feat of scientific capability, and is definitely not something only Dr. Garaki would try, but none of the world seems that interested in it. It's also the cornerstone of All for One's entire evil little operation.
I don't like that lapis is necessary for crafting new guns.
Or even justified. It's completely absurd. To stop the crying child inside of himself.
Admittedly, lapis becoming an enchanting material was healthy for the game's progression.
First of all,
And the vertical progression of the game is pretty terrible.
why are there two of you? What kind of fucking muscle group is this?
But when you assign uses to things like copper and stuff, I don't know. They're meant to be cool things, not useful things.
It's not a bad thing. If you're a vestige, what if you just started ripping shit apart? Wait a second. Why would this have never happened before? She took out Reflect and regeneration from Shigaraki's body, but in the same arc, AFO said he can't dispose of quirks. Why not? She just did it. A quirks then rebel later on in the final arc, and he opens his big comedy chopper and finds down on it. What did that do? Not destroy it. If he can't destroy quirks, why not just fuck around in there? Not like your existence will be deleted. Why didn't the quirks rebel at any other point in history? Why did AFO say can't get rid of quirks when SNS can? Is he just wrong? Is AFO stupid? Are quirks stupid? Maybe it's just something that only AFO cannot do. So could the other quirk messages inside of AFO kill each other? Why don't they do that to weaken him or at least consider it? Are the messages scared? Of what? They are ghosts that exist inside of their enemy that only aid them by not killing each other. The other quirks also fought back and killed SNS, so it's possible to kill other quirks, is not? This doesn't make any fucking sense. Near the end, it's revealed that Star Stripe's only impact is that she left a little scar on the physical burial of Tenko. The Tenko core that doesn't really make any sense, and didn't need to be cracked open to begin with, considering this was a problem created to be solved by SNS that she barely solved. Shigaraki also climbs back out of AFO suppression and takes back over the body. Where the fuck was Shigaraki buried? Another core? Can you just keep doing that? Rewind for one's main goal then becomes to head to Shigaraki to transfer him the copy of AFO, because then he will have complete and total control over Shigaraki. Is that because there will be two AFO vestiges? How does that even work? Soul duplication? Dude, weren't these muscles? Also, AFO was somehow entirely unaware that Shigaraki took his body back at first, even though it was mentioned earlier that they share in consciousness.
I don't get how those stats work.
Space before. I feel like you only noticed that, but Jesus. Shigaraki then steals Dangerous from Deku, so I assume he finally met the qualification to have enough rage to overpower One for All's rule of it not being stealable. Which also doesn't make sense, but it's also something that we accepted a long time ago, so whatever. But how can Shigaraki take one quirk at a time? No, One for All is all one quirk. Because if there weren't all one quirk, it was explained earlier before Villain Hunt that Deku died because bodies can't sustain more than one quirk for too long. So he reached into the quirk and took a piece of it. That's definitely not strange. Back to the Tenko Scar, Star Stripe appears in the message room again for like 0.1 seconds, even though she's dead. I guess she just had one more aim. Also, All Might sees her, again reinforcing that this shared space is completely made up because he's quirkless. And it's explicitly stated that regeneration cannot heal the scar because, yeah, why would it be able to? It's a psychic dream scar, but it's treated as if it's an exception and the rest are healable. Quick question, why the fuck was the rest healable? Anyway, plan to stop Shigaraki is for Deku to transfer individual groups of one for all, one by one, attack that scar, as the messages will fly open. Sure, you know what? Fuck it. At least stop bashing Saint O. And then immediately after it's clarified that's not what they're doing, Deku is transferred them hard enough to shatter the message into nothing and remove the scar. First of all, how do you transfer a quirk hard? Second of all, how do you transfer the quirks individually? Third of all, why does this kill the vestige? Fourth of all, AFO can't destroy quirks, but Deku can? As they go through this complete batshit plan, the memories of Deku and Shigaraki link, for some reason. Both experience aspects of their lives. Not just that, but anything that happens here actually happens in real life, like some fucked up you die in the game, like practice. Because Deku almost gets hit by a fucking truck. Okay, quirks don't make any fucking sense, it's about to get worse. Let's talk about the final confrontation. So, Midoriya is told to give up for fallen order to damage the Tenko core and accepts with no reflection on his own. In fact, Nana is the one who gets to talk about how sad Deku was being. And then, remember, it's that thing that happened 100 chapters ago now. That was cool. Anyway, they fight for a bit, and Deku starts transferring the quirks one by one, and this makes them start seeing each other's memories for, as we established earlier, some fucking reason. While I'm not inherently opposed to this, what it feels like is a lazy band-aid solution for the fact that Deku and Shigaraki never had any meaningful relationship. Imagine how much harder them seeing these things would hit if they didn't know each other more than the gas station attendant. What's really strange is that the plan starts with giving Shigaraki Gear Shift, one of Deku's most powerful quirks, under the speculation of the backlash will be taken Midoriya and given to Shigaraki. Why the fuck does that work? And what if it didn't? You're dead. How about the smoke screen, or how about the All Might message that you apparently transferred despite it having no quirk attached to it? Why are we giving up our own tools for winning? Forced attention? We flash through a bunch of their memories, you might think, hey, surely this is leading to some greater character conflict now. They both know each other's upbringings and relationships, especially after Shigaraki talks about how he wants to be a hero with his friends, the villains, but nope. He just grabs fake Tenko's hands and stops his sister, switches time here moment somehow, and then off it goes back to the comic. My Hero Academia has had a lot of fan theories. A lot of them are absolutely dog shit, like Bakugo. The theory that the second use was Bakugo back in time, or Dad for One, which is about All for One being Deku Dad all along, but that All Might had a suit armor and a suit kit. Or that All for One did Shigaraki's entire life. Okay. Can't be serious. This and Dad for One were up there in the halls of the worst things that could happen in the story. And of course, Corey had at least one more in it. This reveal, or Chapter 419, is the start of a never-ending decline of its final battle. We learned that All for One planned out Shigaraki's entire life unless he met up with his dad because Nana is a fucking and never changed her or her son's last name. He somehow convinced Kotaro to marry his wife and have a kid, which turned out to be Tenko, and then he spent years contriving situations for Tenko to be a hero so that he can develop her own ambition, so not even that is his own. And then fanned the flame of his father's abuse, that too, and All for One's involvement. Shigaraki's circumstances being the most extreme example of dangerous power, outcasted and put in a society that inspires heroism, and being his father's hatred towards heroes, was all down to the very sex position towards his wife, initiated by All for One. No longer a character made of a result of the circumstances of the world he was brought into,
What the hell
the
happened
circumstances
here?
of one man. Shigaraki's entire fight about how we should improve society somewhat was proven wrong. Not for the accurate reason, which is that his methods are terrorism.
This blew up, and very recently too.
Because it's all for One's fault. The story's final obstacle isn't the legitimate flaws of this heroic society that we know past 419 chapters, it's one guy. Capitalizes on the faults of hero society, but the only purpose of All for One's involvement is to water down the message, to take away from hard questions that Deku and Shigaraki face, as their goal becomes
I see.
rather than have the biological. Not only did that happen, we finally got an answer to my age-old question of why didn't All for One overhaul? Well, here's the funny thing. 20 years ago, this baby Shiger actually used it himself and gave that shitty version without reconstruction to Shigaraki to form the cave. What the fuck, man? First of all, how could you split a cord in half? Second of all, was the overhaul message that did they surgically get rid of him? Follow-up question, if so, why not do that? So they can't fuck around and mess it wrong. I can't help but to wonder what the actual fucking of the cave being overhauled. Does it the dynamic Shigaraki overhaul? No. No, it just makes it explicit. Is it because eventually Shigaraki will unlock the other half of it? Nope. Nope. Does it actually mean anything for his quirk? No. Does it do anything for all four besides make him a fucking moron? No. Does it help with our world building? No. It in fact does the opposite by making even more characters connected and removes the parallels that Shigaraki had with someone like Eri who has a quirk mutation. Because even Shigaraki's quirk was made by someone else. This is also how we find out that Shigaraki did have a quirk, actually it was just taken at birth. Deku and Shigaraki are a dynamic that is entirely formed upon parallels. Their circumstances growing up, their mostly quirkless experience, and their parallel growth. This revealed, the parallels have been damaged significantly. They did not have the same circumstances growing up, as Shigaraki was the product of one man. Shigaraki was born with it. When parallel growth was forgotten, Shigaraki stopped being a character. With things damaged, and with the absolute lack of character action in final conflict, you have to wonder, what did this dynamic even accomplish? As we ponder this question, Shigaraki gets body jacked again. This time, however, All For One claims that Shigaraki's spirit is dead, and with it, the decay quirk is gone. That's right. AFO destroyed a quirk. Interesting. With Shigaraki completely usurped, we are left to accept that All For One is the final protagonist. Deviant. An extremely uninteresting, lackluster, underwhelming, parasitic character is the weakest of every dynamic. It takes away from every situation he is put into, and at the end, contributes nothing to the story as a whole. As we discover this, Deku gets up to fight him, but he somehow took actual damage in the running realm in his arms or gone. Shit, stakes. Let's just not turn the page multiple. Yep, let's soak in the moment. Something bad has finally happened to Midori Izuku. Something bad finally happened in my humans. That's awesome. Okay. You're not ready? Let's go ahead and flip. Oh. It's okay. Why? Why do this? Well, obviously, if we don't get his arms back, he can't fight. Duh. This, by the way, is not straw man. This is genuine common response that I've gotten. And you're like, okay, sure. Addressing the root cause, unfortunately. Some people like to coddle or baby authors and follow just a little guy like that. They're not actually the one writing the story. And I think some people might that mistake actually happened. Just it's not. It's arms. Not me. Fight. All of these things inside the sky. If the decision to take arms over the air to get it back. Like that. Jump offers are usually back, and so it's almost guaranteed that this was always his intended direction. It was likely this idea of Eri paying forward the kindness given by Deku or something of that nature. This entire arc has been everyone paying Deku's kindness forward, and I don't think we had to include the literal child in the war to show her gratuity towards Deku. She can just whatever the fuck 5 wants to do. Or it retroactively include all of the people who slander Eri correct, because indeed, her only purpose was to be used as an undue button for narrative consequences. How about we just don't take his arm, don't try to connect him to some grand hard-hitting moment. It's funny, when he first lost his arms, everyone on Twitter was shitting on Eri politely because, you guys always say there's no stakes in MHA. Well, look at that, Deku lost his arms. And then the next chapter dropped at the back, and then it became, well, what else was going to happen? You can't fight with no arms, just a fucking children. Back when Goku was supposed to believe his revival was delivering a ham-fisted message of the older generation protecting the generation, unless you're the big three because you're reaching out and no diner. This chapter shows that teachers will help you permanently mutilate yourself and your quirk to heal someone, even if you're a fucking toddler. What happened to Villan's messaging of not pushing yourself past the point of limits? Or supposed to be killing yourself to save others, but now Aries' quirk is allegedly permanently damaged. Also, a little girl with extensive trauma from has to once again mutilate herself to save the day. Very cool. Her damaging or losing her quirk defeats the purpose of her arc, which is learning to love herself quirk and all, and believing that she isn't a monster. And just Deku said, the application of her to save people is something that she can work towards being a life. Kidding, chop it off. Why does it even fucking work? It's completely detached from her body. Why does stabbing someone with it make it work? If Eraserhead just dropped the horrible point like by accident, this arc is so fucking bad, not even culture as more sacred. At the same time, we also learn that One For All God is fighting purely with the embers of One For All, just like All Might in Act 1. Worthless Deku is an entire can of worms compared to the Act 1. Anyway, I know we just started talking about All, but this is where it ends. No, seriously, it's about to end. Deku is cheered on by all of his friends and pushed forward as he rushes to the body jack Shigaraki, punches him. That punch kills him. No direction, no relationship, no conversation, and their final between them but a punch between Deku and Alpha. After having 17 chapters of his own to 3 years, Shigaraki dies in one hit from someone who said he would save him, and never even tried. Myself personally, I was never inherently against the idea of Deku having to kill Shigaraki. It was something that, if it did happen, I wanted Deku to have to come to accept that it was his decision. It would be something that comes after a long, arduous road of trying to save him. This moment right here truly demonstrates that Horikoshi had no real intention of making Deku and Shigaraki more than they were in Act 2. Their entire conflict fell apart because he wrote Shigaraki out of the story for 3 years and turned Deku into such a passive non-character with no thoughts or feelings on his own, his entire final fight being hijacked by ghosts, that put in place a plan to kill the final antagonist. Tomura dies without getting to be himself, with no reaction to Twice's death, with no reaction to Dabi's reveal, with no reaction to April's huge impact on his life, his final moment wound up being off-screen, and with no significant last words. A character who embodied found family with completely tossing out to the side to get hit once and killed. Genuinely unbelievable. My Hero Academia put so much emphasis on this idea of saving the villain that it's genuinely staggering how little Deku tried. All the way from the Culture Festival to now, and the plotline's conclusion is that Deku tells him someone reached out to him and saved him, but it's a shame Tenko didn't get that, I guess, so it's time to kill him. The most important prospect of saving someone is making them believe they can be saved. The words Deku once said to Gentle that touched his heart and lit a fire inside of him. The actions Deku showed in a gauntlet that made him think twice. The words that he would say to Edith in that alleyway. Don't get a single drop of that in this account. My Hero Academia was supposed to be about breaking the cycle of the older generation's methods of heroism. People like All Might and Endeavor gave us only attack the symptoms and perpetuate the cycles of poverty unintentionally, and that the system that exists under now has an incentive to keep bills in the streets. Deku's answer to Shigaraki is to change nothing, to kill Shigaraki with Deku's own words, to stop him from passing on his sadness. Deku's I am here moment comes not at a time where he finally separates himself from the hero's role by getting a Tenko's origin, but when Deku ultimately fails, becoming one of the greatest heroes after failing to understand his villain, not even really trying to understand his villain, failing to save him, and killing him with his big final smash, being portrayed as a heroic moment, calling back to an All Might punch so hard to save Bakugo, he cleared the sky, because killing people without even trying to save them is really cool and animation. Tomura's last words that he imparted to Deku to tell Spinner, 1, doesn't know who Spinner is, and 2, doesn't know that Spinner is currently hitting the fence stands behind a 7-Eleven, is that Shigaraki destroyed Toby Edge. Doesn't really do anything to break the cycle's ability and will just serve to make Shigaraki harder to impress once again, acting as another incarnation of the your next phrase that serves as a shackle to Midoriya and Shigaraki's mindsets. And of course, this isn't even mentioning that none of these words do anything for Shigaraki's relationships. I guess Toga, Dabi, Twice, and Mr. Compress just don't. What makes this conclusion even more fucking mind-boggling is that you have someone like Shoto rejected Deku's act of reaching out multiple times until one talk changed his outlook on life and sent him on a long 400-chapter journey of overcoming his trauma. Shigaraki had his hand held, all of his problems disappeared because of court magic that he got one tapped. The message of My Hero Academia's final arc is, you're a villain, you should just kill yourself to prevent your sadness from reaching other people. What the fuck happened in this arc? Like, genuinely. I know I said in the Villain Hunt section that Villain Hunt didn't feel like MHA, but that was written at a time when its arc existed, and I owe an apology to Villain Hunt. It still has the lingering dregs of Energy's prior existence. This arc? It's a fucking disaster. This is my own hypothesis, if not a confirmation, but this is what I think happened. The fall of MHA, in my opinion, happened right here, at this moment. A chapter that outtrended the US 2020 election that shocked people around the world and was some of the best execution for a review I've ever seen. A review years and years in the making, and immediately after, we got a jam-packed arc finale of reveal after reveal with no respect for the reveals that came just before. Ori saw how fucking cool Dabi's dance was and immediately put pedal to the metal to rush the final arc to have it end the string of unearned Dabi's dances, the high of the narrative climax. He threw away everything that made this story great, the slow, simmering build-up MHA became known for, the strong interpersonal connections and relationships, the fascinating and heavily intertwined fights and emotional climaxes, all for one more Dabi's dance. You can point to one quality of almost every arc that has been ruined retroactively by this arc in itself. I think what sticks out to me the most while making this video, having to look back into the past of MHA so many times, is just how colossally different Midoriya is. This once deeply introspective character who valued himself so little after his years of bullying and being put down from his dreams has really become, well, nothing. It got to the point that around this time, the fandom genuinely had people writing threads to debunk that Izuku Midoriya ever had issues of self-worth. The historical revisionism on his character is just deranged. Midoriya's Rising chapter, and for those unaware, because I don't think we ever really touched on them, MHA has something called Rising chapters. These rare chapters serve as culminations of character arcs, the ultimate climax of the story's been casting and followed for nearly a decade. Bakugo Rising is him coming full circle and taking the step for Deku, benchmarking his progress thus far. A Deku's own Rising chapter doesn't do anything. He gets pushed on by his friends, and then of course, one-hit KOs Shigaraki. But he himself doesn't think about it or do anything. Back at all of Act 3 through new lens. I mentioned this prior in this section, but I really do think that Midoriya's character was just done. Villain Hunt was likely the end of Midoriya's arc. There was never any substantial plotline about self-worth because that wasn't relevant. The Nagan fight showed us that there was never going to be any more questions about saving villains, and you can't reach out to them, because if you aren't immediately changing, then you're too far gone. Instead, all that Midoriya's character was is no man is an island and more power. Both of which are aspects of the character that repeatedly failed, but I digress. And I think that this is partially why Horikoshi never actually delivered on his word when it comes to introducing Deku's dad, because I think that would have had massive potential for Deku's character. In a series where the connection is so heavily intertwined in all of our main characters, except Bakugo, Midoriya being fatherless contained a massive trove of untapped potential, especially with how they could have related Deku trying to help Shoto accept his dad's atonement. Shigaraki and the League of Villains at large also did not deliver by any means. The group, once brought together by Joe's struggle, people that fell through the social safety nets and found each other, ended up largely not caring about one another at the end of it. Gone are the days of Shigaraki raging on behalf of Twice, or Shigaraki remembering what they wanted sushi, or ultimately Toga to return to them now. None of them think about each other in apparently final moments. Twice's demise, Stoke was largely untapped. Bagman was forgotten. Nobody really cares that Spinner was turned into a giant brain-dead monster. Nobody gave a shit that Shigaraki was body jacked to become Flesh Beam. Holy shit, who remembered Mr. Confess? You know, the guy who worked his ass off to save the league? Who thinks about him? Certainly not Horikoshi. Lone Hunt as an arc in itself has just been completely trodden upon, which is crazy because it wasn't that long ago. And what's really crazy is that Midoriya asked Muscular more about his past and reasonings than he does anything with Shigaraki. At the beginning of MHA Retrospective 1, we go through some of the core thematics of the story. Remember those you in a PSP? One was, doesn't need to be a hero. A hero was someone who could break through people's darkest moments. People try to put a smile on someone's face. The sun could not be seen. Being a hero meant putting yourself out in the open, to act as a beacon to those lost in service, to recognize others' pain and do what you can. How did the central theme end up? Well, just when every villain's fucking dead. Midoriya did nothing to save Shigaraki and decided to kill him randomly as fuck. Toya used to be determined. Chaka reached out and tried to save Toga, but Toga still never saw a way out of her circumstances and probably killed herself. Kurogiri gets one-tapped by Bakugo for some reason. Spinner had Neuralink installed in his mind and will likely never see him again. The only people that were saved were Aoyama, who came from an initial position of extreme privilege besides being cordless, and Lady Nagant, who was quite literally the exact example of someone that the MHA fandom at large wants dead because they kill people, but Nagant is hot, so she could turn over. This massive disconnect, well, I guess at the end of the day, it wasn't that much of a disconnect, but this difference between what MHA was putting out there and what believed to be the case is kind of staggering. If you kill someone, you should be put to death. The general fan opinion that came to be after a lot of diehard MHA fans split off from the community was the tragedy of Act 3. Not sure how, but My Hero Academia managed to attract a case of bootlicker fan base towards the end of its run that it might as well have been to My Death Penalty Academia. A complete rejection of the series' idea up to this point, which I guess goes to show you that the series is turning heel is in fact real. This fandom discourse went from, oh man, I wonder how Deku's going to save Shigaraki, to Deku should kill all the villains because killing people means he should be executed by the state. But Nagant was, strange about that event. The argument is because she did have a change of heart eventually, then you remember that she still advocated for Toga's death even after, I would like to say Ochako, because she killed billions or something. So I guess being a hero is when you ignore the systemic issues that led to the problem in front of it, and generation's failure by punching the problem as hard as possible, because when the state kills people, it's cool. Capitalization of violence and so on and so forth, and just keep it pushing until we see someone steal a packet of Skittles from the corner store and 100% smash. Number 2 was societal discrimination, referencing the plight of the wordless, the charged impressions of people like Shinzo, and of course Spinner and Shoji. Well, it definitely still had this theme, but as we saw in the final war, it was a complete utter fucking disaster. Not only did we have agents of the state say, hey, have you guys tried waiting to get better? And of course, you can't forget Moriko turning the main villain plotline into a one-man monster. Every good representation of different things there. When it comes to the social fallout that some people face, well, that never really mattered again outside of Aoyama's rich parents and not one. Yeah, strangely for having a quirky son, which is an appreciated aspect of more or less abandoned aspect of the world, but it feels like there could have been so much more thought put in, especially with Deku finding out Aoyama too. But they never have any conversation about it anyway, so makes a comment about it a fucking Bakugo. It's just another sprinkle on the cake, way too overloaded sprinkles known as the immense potential of Victoria, a character I once was really, really invested in. I won't write number 2 off as like a complete total failure, because My Hero Academia did somewhat try to make this the overarching story, just sucked. Number 3 was the pressure of expectation, and unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think this one was really fumbled actually. Number 4 was passing the torch and moving forward. Let's just say this one was usurped in every possible opportunity after Act 2. Right when Shigaraki and Deku would become their best versions of themselves, Shigaraki gets his body hijacked for the rest of the story by the first character in My Hero Academia, and Deku is bravely cut off his ears after having used Aoyama talk for more than 30 seconds, and his will gets hijacked by dead people. For most of the story, the total all-night focuses on Denver rather than Shoto, of course until its conclusion. Then you have All For One and All Might fighting again to really rub your face in the fact that this message doesn't really matter anymore, with All Might audibly saying that this was always his fight because, truly, progression has never happened. I think I mentioned this earlier, but in a more competent story, the older generation creeping back and the refusal to relinquish control would be an interesting twist on the premise until you have the good guys doing it too. That's supposed to be like cool and epic. And even if that is the point Horror was going for, damage to the story was not fucking worth it. Number 5, the final one, is reaching out and connecting. Specifically how hands are used to represent forming connections with people to save them. Alternatively, you can use those hands to kill someone, as Horikoshi made clear. Not someone else, then most certainly yourself. Or only worth forming a connection with if you've killed a lot of people, but you didn't hear to prison. If anything else, okay, you think you team. I think that's enough harping on the final arc itself, and all the things that retroactive. There's really only one thing left to talk about, which is crazy to think about. We're actually at the very end of a series that used to be so important. Let's get to the final part, the epilogue. But first, an intermission. Season 7 is really about the same, except it has a new director, Naomi Nakayama. Someone who does a lot of storyboarding for openings, endings, and episodes. I'll be real, even with my distaste for the MHA anime, Season 7 has a notable direction quality, at least in my opinion. Even though it still repeats the same old uninteresting shots every now and again, during priority scenes it feels like it goes above and beyond. It's strange, Season 7 has some absolutely killer openings and endings, some of the best of the series. Direction takes a notable step up, and half the season diverts from its standard, boring midday lighting Season 6, and we're doing all this for some of the worst content the story has to offer. It's definitely a strange spot. To sit back and watch an episode and go like, yeah, that wasn't that bad, and then realize I just watched a syringe and bubble try to pump Bakugo's heart back to life. In such an action-heavy arc, we were left to wonder, how well can this really go? We saw with PLW that it was nothing but fumble after fumble, argue that the final move has even more ambitious fights to do. Benefits, they pretty smartly use 4 of the standard 25 episodes as recap episodes, meaning they don't have to shove filler into the season, and get 4 less episodes they have to work on substantially. 25 episodes is around 550 minutes of animation, or around 21 episodes, brings that down to a much more manageable 460 minutes. Meaning you get to pick and choose your battles better. Well, by the time this video comes out, the season will be over. I'm not going to wait until that post, so how have we done so far? I'll be honest, not fantastic. MHA continually falls into the same issues it struggled with for quite some time. First being it follows the manga too closely flashback scenes. The reason the manga can get away with intersplicing flashbacks the way it does is because it doesn't see in full. You get a screen cap of it, and then you can just literally scroll past with your eyes. Seeing the shot alone gets the point across. The anime, however, adapts these, you could say, faithfully. In that every time there's a flashback in the manga, we have to sit there and watch the scene, maybe even in full, no matter how long it happened. Taking my flashback acting too seriously. This has been a long-standing issue, and it isn't really a season.
God damn it. Where are the amethysts?
Nationwide battle, these flashbacks cutting in completely and utterly cuts down on any of the hype and excitement of the scene. What also does not help its pacing is how it structures its fights. I already mentioned this in Season 6, how it all builds up to a story-jacking recreational manga panel not much has fundamentally changed there. Time and time again, we see some great direction, shot composition, lighting, and a bunch of other terms I don't know the definition of, all of it to build up to the most awkward still frame of all time. These coupled with the prior flashbacks make scenes and fights feel so disjointed, slow, and awkward. What's the solution? I'm honestly not sure because I understand why they want to adapt these flashbacks. They feel kind of important. The change in lighting with the clouds coming in at the Baku's death really shows just how much better the imaging can look when it's not permanently marred by midday lighting, and also lighting that lights up those hideous, ugly backgrounds by Musa. That coupled with the direction is an unfortunate look into what the imaging anime could have been over the years, instead of the largely hard-looking at best it's evolved into. I mean, no disrespect to the staff, I say that because they are working their absolute hardest with the time they were given. The time that they were given, I must is just never enough. Season 7 is a marginal step up from Season 6 so far, and it's kind of bizarre to see a period where the manga and anime on the same arc. Lets you know how ludicrous and long the final arc is. The season hit its emotional beats very well, and the direction comes a lot, even MJ is still failing to hit its visual mark for me. It's nice to see it have an uptick, and it's sad to see it come so late, and for content I am so uninvested in that after this video comes out, I'm probably never going to watch the anime again. That's enough stalling. I guess we should get to what people really came here for.
I don't draw with the intention of message between on such situations or the build on. I draw with a sense of responsibility towards the world of MHA, always thinking about how I can find it interesting.
The actual, for real conclusion that the federal guideline is sorely lacking. Of course, the fan opinion on this is split as well, to nobody's surprise. But my irritation with this conclusion comes from is that it once again centers primarily on Endeavor. Shoto, the hero of the family and the character that should be the focal plotline, it's like 2 lines of dialogue. Not spoken, doesn't really talk about his family, and just says it's gonna bounce. Fuyuki and Ray get completely sidelined as Horikoshi treats this as a setup to a conclusion, rather than a proper conclusion. Have them both say that they have so many things that they want to talk to Toei about, but they never actually get to say it. And not even somehow surrounding Toei himself gets to say anything besides, "Curse you, Dad." Speaking of which, Dabi is in fact alive. Asterisk, I guess. We get this sort of vague, alive for now comment, as if that doesn't apply to every UP ever. But we do with him now that he's alive. You guess nothing. You win. Nothing. A one-word interaction with Shoto, nothing to say to his dad or any of his family. Nothing about the family that he found, nothing about the girl he spent his last encouraging moments with, the woman that had her entire life destroyed by Endeavor and thrown to a mental hospital. Hayden gets to say nothing to her son and ends up acting as Endeavor's personal servant because he can't walk anymore. Even down to the final chapter, we see Endeavor just kicking him with the sidekicks as Ray continues to push him around his wheelchair. It perfectly encapsulates the issues of this plotline. We're given no confirmation on Toei's death, we're given no closing remarks from Ray, we find them one to speak with Oya, and we're not even given a final scene with Shoto, completely glossed over as we barrel towards our rapid conclusion. We also get some wonderful information that Hawks wanted to reach out and give Lady Nagon a government job. A serial murderer on behalf of the state apparatus who served like a couple of years in prison, and the only reason she said no is because she wants to sit back and observe for a bit, but Shigaraki, Toga, and Kurogiri all had to die for some reason. I guess as long as you do a single good thing after all the bad, you're chill, unless, The hypocrisy of this is not just from the story, but from the fandom especially. Go to bat for this comparison and say, well, the god killed people because the government told her to, so it's fine. Very, very interesting. Oh yeah, Hawks. He's a character of all time. He finally lost his quirk, something that influenced so much of his childhood and his life overall. He doesn't really care. Sounds like another bird right? He just sits there and giggles with the gaunt. It just goes to show you that Horikoshi is completely and utterly given up on these characters. Experiences they went through, even before end of it all, not matter in any shape or form, to show his lack of recognition on this whole. The agency that Hawks said he obliterated from, well, he's the president of it now. Let's not make sports here. Hawks becoming the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission is like if the contrary your house and put 35 rounds to your sleeping dog and not like feeling that surge of battle. Matter how powerful. Surely he was going on press tours during the election about how good of a dog that little guy has been. Hawks has done absolutely zero introspection or growth to deserve this position. He still has not said anything about why killing a man was maybe not the best decision. He has never said a single thing that indicates he would change how things are. Were there any other characters that could take the position? No, probably not. Should have just constructed the story so that we don't have the weird murderer take up the mantle. As Hawks and Nagon talk, she says that she wants to stay in jail for now as she wants to see how society reacts to what the book showed them. What did he show them? Life leak? Let's make one thing clear. Deku did not do anything, but if he did, it would have been in the vestige realm that nobody could see. Let's save that for later, though. Well, that's the Todoroki Gambit conclusion plus Hawks, as always. It's pretty inconsistent and bad, missing the point of what made our plot is interesting, and it kind of boils straight down to a local servant, which is kind of fucking gross. Let's see what the only surviving League of Villains member has to say. If you had asked me 2 years ago if I thought Spinner would get his own section of the epilogue portion of the script, I would have definitely laughed at you. However, everyone else is dead, so the Spinner wrap-up chapter begins with a TV documentary called Who Was Tomoura Shigaraki Really? That demonstrates to us nothing has fundamentally changed. Despite the weird whiplash of hope and expectation from the last chapter, everything is the same. Midoriya has shown these people want to reach out and understand people, but to kill them, a doubling down on the status quo. Deku arrives to inform Spinner of Shigaraki's last words, and Spinner calls him a murderer, to which Deku can't really fight back. This is probably the only Deku opening that I liked. We get an epic, wholesome 100 moment where Deku attempts to empathize with Spinner over his sadness due to Shigaraki's death, and how he was his first real friend, but Deku is just not the first to do it. I actually really like this part of the chapter where it interlaces the documentary approach towards Shigaraki with Spinner's remarks on the relationship. Deku just feels like he was aged after interviews every time. It feels like this entire chapter could have happened without him. He was purely a catalyst for Spinner's character. The primary thing that irritates me is how Horikoshi approached people like Fox and Deku. We were sold that these two formed connections with these people. They wanted to reach out and take them out of their situations, but completely fumbled their intents. Hawks, I thought, was potential at first, but now I'm not so sure. After trying nothing and giving up, Deku and Hawks immediately kill their villain. What comes after that? Well, nothing. We're thankfully seeing the aftermath of Shigaraki's death on Spinner, but what about that guy who did it? This is the exact same thing that happened with Hawks. He killed him and got to wax poetic after his demise by how bad he was and how he understands to his rage towards him, but it's never reflected in actions or the rest of his words. Twice when he was a great icon. He could have been, but you robbed him of the opportunity for both an atonement. Deku killed Shigaraki and is now getting major after his demise about how he touched the League's hearts and helped them forget him. It's a completely toothless, half-baked implementation of the aftermath of a death that avoids all the hardest questions. Deku hasn't had to reflect on what he's done to these people, what he did to Shigaraki. He never attempts to make amends with Spinner, just passes a message and says, I won't ever forget, while the blood still hasn't even dried on his hands. It's a very out for his character that kills. You get illegal if you saw the moral fast to kill these people, and you get the opportunity that will never have, opportunity to think about what could have been. What happened to the Deku that had deep introspection about his failure to save Bakugo, about Bakugo's sports festival? Think about the kind of hero you wanted to be in Overhaul. According to the villains, there is something extremely off-putting about the idea that Tomura had nothing to say to any of the villains besides Spinner, something Spinner came up with. We call the League a bad family unlawful. At this point, they haven't had any connection for nearly half of the entire series. When things go on for that long, it leads you to wonder if you were right. Even though Horikoshi clearly demonstrated that in the past and showed their bond multiple times, did he actually need to do that? Was this really just a group of random people that had killed each other? Spinner has only thought Toga, whose fate is undetermined. There's nothing to say about Dobby, Alcrest, and anyone else. Neither do any of them. As this thing wraps up, Spinner says that he's going to write a book about Tomura Shigaraki's life, which, by the way, is exactly what All For One would do. And he turns around and listens to pick a comic book. Shut the fuck up. For some reason, his chapter also includes overhauls, which shows that super cool magic technology are bosses for one somehow, and overhaul is going to spend the rest of his life. Question: why did we move overhaul back home? He wasn't introduced in Blood Jake, what would have changed the story. Whatever, I guess. The very dark chapter of the man grief the lost friend in life wraps up with a tone-deaf gag about Bakugo and Shoto chasing the halls by Zero way. Very cool horror. Let's check in on Toga. We left off with Toga and Ochako. It was over a year ago, and we're left to wonder what actually happened. Toga transformed and started giving Ochako a hug, and Horikoshi going out of his way to never show the battlefield in full, as if he was hiding something. Strange camera angles, weird framing, and almost never cutting back to the fight as if he was guessing on Toga's fate. And now we know Ochako was his conclusions, and it's safe to say there are some of the worst in our story. But in extreme issues with Ochako, Toga died believing there was a graceful Ice's line about society having ways for insane lines like was unfortunately indicated. A character that was a clear allegory about the struggles of social acceptance and the struggles of sexual identity was killed in the room. There's no better place for her than the cessation of existence. No path forward, no line of hope moments, and nobody's arc steps in when this act has so many moments of the common people stepping in. Enough to get steps in to stop a teenager from killing himself.
Now,
This doesn't get a step in and save his character. Well, at least posthumously, the recording of Toga's sacrifice could be played worldwide to show people that things are changing. The camera ran out of battery, so nobody saw anything besides Toga standing on Choco. I see. Her suicide to save someone wasn't even recorded, meaning that Toga's death accomplishes nothing besides making Ochako's character fumble. I see. No protecting children, no civilians putting in work, no saving the village, just a suicide of a gay girl that loved protected him. I see. Monaco can survive getting his body blown up, Gabi can survive being turned into a husk, and Edshot can survive being turned into a worm, but Toga will dump all of her blood into Ochako in 5 seconds and kill herself instantly. Literally, why?
1, she's a female. 2, she's got a boy. And 3, most importantly, she's a girl.
With Toga's death confirmation in mind, we now know that for a part where the heroes were working to try and save their villains, with the intent to kill almost all of them. This reveal is terrible for Toga, but Ochako will be dealt even more so. Ochako failed not just one of her primary plotlines, but both of them. She failed to save Toga, going out as yet another character who achieved nothing but the end of the story, as well as sparking no change because the adults watching the fight did nothing to stop Toga's suicide. She completely regresses to the epilogue to the point of going back on her suppression plotline. Due to her failure, she's quite sad, obviously. However, after going through an entire fight with the message of she should stop holding everything in and self-harm, she should be open about her feelings. Nope. She tells nobody and self-isolates. 0 progress was made. Deku notices this and goes to meet with her, and we all expected this to be a confession scene, no matter how tonally whack and out of place it would be.